Look up at the night sky and imagine Saturn floating peacefully in the darkness. This ringed giant holds gentle secrets that have quietly danced through space for billions of years, waiting to guide you into rest. Welcome to the most peaceful corner of our solar system, where a gentle giant floats in the cosmic darkness like a golden jewel wrapped in gossip-thin rings. Saturn isn't just another planet. It's basically the universe's way of showing off its artistic skills. While other planets throw tantrums with volcanic explosions or dust storms that last for months, Saturn just exists peacefully. Like that friend who never gets stressed about anything and somehow makes everyone else feel calmer just by being around. The Romans named it after their god of time and agriculture, which makes perfect sense when you think about it. Saturn moves through space with the patience of someone who's got all the time in the world. No rushing, no drama, just a steady 29-year stroll around the sun. But here's what makes Saturn truly special for those seeking cosmic tranquility. Everything about this planet whispers rather than shouts. Its buttery yellow atmosphere swirls in gentle bands. Its famous rings circle with mathematical precision. Even its moons behave like well-mannered dinner guests, each keeping to their assigned orbit without causing trouble. Tonight, we're going on a journey to discover why Saturn might just be the most soothing sight in our solar neighborhood. Speaking of soothing, let's start with how ancient stargazers first fell under Saturn's spell. Long before we had fancy telescopes or space probes, ancient stargazers noticed something peculiar about Saturn. It wandered across the sky so slowly that some cultures thought it was broken. While other planets zipped around like cosmic speed demons, Saturn took its sweet time. The Babylonians called it Lubadsagush, which roughly translates to the oldest of the old. They weren't wrong. Saturn completes one lap around the sun every 29.5 Earth years. That's longer than most people's entire careers. Ancient astronomers found this oddly comforting. While everything else in their lives changed rapidly, Saturn remained predictably sluggish. You could literally watch it for decades and barely notice it moving. Talk about commitment to taking things slow. The Greeks named it after Kronos, their god of time and patience. Makes perfect sense when you think about it. This planet embodies the very essence of good things come to those who wait. But here's what's truly mesmerizing about Saturn's leisurely journey. During those 29 years, entire generations of humans are born, grow up, and start families. Meanwhile, Saturn just keeps drifting along its ancient path, like a wise grandfather taking an eternal evening stroll. This unhurried pace creates something almost meditative. But Saturn's gentle nature goes far deeper than just its slow orbit. Imagine a planet so light it could float in your bathtub. Well, if you had a bathtub the size of an ocean. Saturn weighs in at about 95 times Earth's mass. But here's the mind-bending part. It's mostly empty space. The ringed giant has a density of just 0.69 grams per cubic centimeter. Water? That's 1 gram per cubic centimeter. Saturn would literally bob on the surface like a cosmic beach ball. Makes you wonder what kind of swimming pool you'd need for that experiment, right? This incredible lightness comes from Saturn being made almost entirely of hydrogen and helium. The same stuff that fills party balloons. It's like someone took the universe's largest balloon and decided to make it a planet instead. But here's where things get beautifully weird. Saturn's core might be solid rock and ice, buried under thousands of miles of swirling gas. The pressure down there is so intense it could turn hydrogen into liquid metal. Yet somehow, all that dense material still can't make Saturn heavy enough to sink in water. The sheer airiness of this giant creates something almost magical, a world that defies our earthbound expectations of what planets should be. It's the universe's gentle reminder that even the most massive things can still feel weightless and dreamy. Speaking of dreams, Saturn's leisurely 29-year journey around our sun creates its own kind of cosmic meditation. Remember how we just talked about Saturn being so light it could float? Well, there's another reason why Saturn feels like the universe's most chill planet. Its orbit takes 29 and a half years to complete just one trip around the sun. 29 years. That's like you could be born, graduate high school, finish college, and start your career before Saturn finishes saying, "Hey son, see you next lap." But here's what makes this so beautifully calming. While Earth is racing around the sun like it's late for an appointment, Saturn just takes its time. No rush, no hurry. It's the cosmic equivalent of that friend who walks really slowly through the grocery store, actually reading labels and enjoying the experience. Ancient astronomers called it the slow wanderer for good reason. They'd watch it creep across the sky, barely moving from month to month. Makes sense, right? When you're that far out, why rush? This leisurely pace creates something almost meditative about Saturn. Each year on Earth is just a tiny fraction of Saturn's grand journey. It's like watching the world's most patient marathon runner, never breaking stride, never getting tired. The crazy part? Saturn's been doing this exact same peaceful dance for over 4 billion years. Talk about commitment to staying calm. Speaking of staying calm, wait until you see Saturn's gorgeous golden colors that make every sunset jealous. Looking at Saturn through even a basic telescope reveals something that immediately puts your mind at ease. The warm, buttery glow. Those golden amber hues swirling through Saturn's atmosphere aren't just beautiful. They're basically cosmic comfort food for your eyes. Ever notice how certain colors just make you feel calm? There's actual psychology behind this. Warm colors, like Saturn's golden tones, trigger the same relaxation response as watching a sunset or sitting by a crackling fireplace. Your brain associates these hues with safety and peace. But here's what's fascinating about Saturn's color palette. Those gorgeous golden bands aren't just for show. They come from ammonia crystals in the upper atmosphere mixing with trace amounts of phosphine and other compounds. Basically, Saturn is wearing nature's most soothing makeup. The temperature gradient creates these layered bands of cream, amber, and pale yellow. Each layer tells a story about wind speeds and atmospheric pressure. Yet somehow, all this complexity comes together to create the most relaxing color scheme in the solar system. Compare Saturn to Jupiter's angry reds and browns, or Mars's intimidating rust. Saturn chose the path of Zen interior design. It's like the planet hired the universe's best color therapist. Even more remarkable, these warm tones remain consistent year after year. Saturn's eternal golden hour never ends, creating a permanent state of atmospheric serenity that makes you want to curl up and drift away. Speaking of Saturn's calming presence, wait until you discover how its most famous feature creates the ultimate cosmic lullaby. When Galileo first pointed his primitive telescope at Saturn in 1610, he thought he was losing his mind. The planet looked like it had handles, or maybe ears. Poor guy spent years trying to figure out what those mysterious bumps were. never imagining he was witnessing the most beautiful celestial feature in our solar system. Those handles turned out to be Saturn's magnificent rings. And honestly, they're probably the closest thing to perfection we'll ever see floating in space. The rings stretch out over 200,000 miles from edge to edge, yet they're only about 30 feet thick in most places. That's like taking a dinner plate and making it as thin as a sheet of paper. Talk about cosmic elegance. What makes them so mesmerizing isn't just their size, though. It's the perfect symmetry. Every particle, every chunk of ice, follows the exact same gravitational rules. No exceptions. No rebellious bits flying off in random directions. Just pure, mathematical harmony spinning around Saturn like the universe's most elaborate record player. The ancient Greeks would have called this cosmic music. They believed perfect circles and spheres created heavenly melodies. Turns out, they weren't entirely wrong. But here's what's really going to blow your mind about these rings. They're not actually solid at all. When you really think about what Saturn's rings are made of, it's almost poetic. Billions upon billions of water ice crystals, each one tumbling gracefully through the vacuum of space. Some are as tiny as snowflakes, others as massive as buildings, but they're all essentially frozen water. The same stuff you put in your drinks, or that falls as snow on Earth. The funny thing is, if you could somehow collect all those ring particles and melt them down, you'd have enough water to fill millions of Olympic swimming pools. Talk about the ultimate ice rink. These aren't just any old rocks floating around. They're pristine chunks of H2O that have been preserved in the cosmic freezer for potentially billions of years. What makes this even more remarkable is how pure this ice appears to be. Unlike the dirty snowballs we call comets, Saturn's ring particles seem almost crystalline in their clarity. They reflect sunlight beautifully, giving the rings that brilliant ethereal glow we see in photographs. Each particle follows its own perfect orbit, never touching its neighbors, yet forever part of the same magnificent structure. It's like watching frozen raindrops perform an eternal ballet, each one catching and reflecting starlight as it spins through the darkness. But these ice crystals aren't just sitting there quietly. They're constantly being shaped by forces that create something even more mesmerizing. The shepherd moons are basically Saturn's cosmic traffic controllers, and they're surprisingly good at their job. These tiny celestial bodies, we're talking about moons so small you could walk across some of them in an afternoon, somehow manage to keep Saturn's massive ring system perfectly organized. Take Prometheus and Pandora, the two little shepherds that babysit the F ring. They're like cosmic bouncers, making sure ring particles stay in line. Well, sort of. The truth is, these moons create just enough gravitational chaos to keep things interesting while maintaining overall order. The whole setup is hilariously backwards when you think about it. Moons that are barely the size of city blocks are telling chunks of ice the size of buildings where they can and cannot go. And somehow, it works. The ring particles actually listen. Here's what makes it even more amusing. Sometimes, the shepherd moons get a bit lazy. Prometheus occasionally gets too close to the F ring and literally steals material from it, creating these temporary streamers that look like cosmic silly string. Then it just keeps orbiting like nothing happened. The gravitational tug-of-war between these tiny shepherds creates waves and gaps that ripple through the rings like a gentle cosmic breeze. But there's something even more mysterious happening in the largest gap of all. Deep inside Saturn's magnificent ring system lies something beautifully empty. The Cassini division stretches 4,700 kilometers wide, making it the largest gap in Saturn's rings. Named after Giovanni Cassini, who spotted it way back in 1675, this space represents one of the most peaceful places in our solar system. What makes this gap so special? Well, it's not completely empty like you might think. Tiny ice particles still drift through this region, but they're so sparse that the division appears dark and quiet compared to the bustling ring material on either side. It's like finding a calm clearing in the middle of a busy marketplace. The gap exists because of something called orbital resonance. Any particle trying to orbit in this zone gets gently nudged by Saturn's moon mimas every 2 orbits. Over millions of years, these consistent gravitational tugs slowly cleared out most of the material, creating this serene corridor through the rings. Floating through the Cassini division would feel incredibly peaceful. You'd have the bright, shimmering A ring on one side and the dense B ring on the other, but you'd be suspended in relative emptiness. It's meditation made manifest in space. But this quiet gap holds secrets that reveal something even more mesmerizing about how Saturn's entire ring system dances together. Those ethereal spokes I mentioned, they're some of Saturn's most mysterious ring features. These ghostly patterns appear and disappear like cosmic breathing. When Voyager first spotted them back in 1980, scientists were completely baffled. The spokes looked like bicycle wheel spokes made of light, stretching radially across the rings. They'd appear for a few hours, then vanish without a trace. Well, turns out these aren't solid structures at all. They're actually clouds of tiny dust particles that somehow lift above the main ring plane. The particles are so small they practically float, defying the normal rules that govern larger ring chunks. But here's where it gets really wild. These spokes follow Saturn's magnetic field, not its gravity. It's like the planet is gently conducting an orchestra of dust particles with invisible magnetic batons. The particles get electrically charged and start dancing to Saturn's magnetic rhythm instead of following regular orbital mechanics. The timing is particularly soothing too. Spokes appear most often during Saturn's equinox seasons when the sun shines directly on the ring edges. They emerge, perform their mysterious ballet, then fade away like morning mist. Scientists think electrical forces are creating these phenomena, but the exact mechanism remains beautifully unknown. Sometimes the most peaceful mysteries are the ones that keep us gently wondering about the cosmos around us. Speaking of Saturn's atmospheric mysteries, there's something even more spectacular waiting at the planet's North Pole. Every 29 to 30 years, Saturn throws what you could call the solar system's most punctual tantrum. These massive storms appear like clockwork, and they're absolutely incredible to witness from our safe distance here on Earth. The Great White Spot isn't just one storm. It's a whole series of these enormous atmospheric events that follow Saturn's sleepy schedule. Think about it. While Earth gets surprised by hurricanes and tornadoes, Saturn's storms are so predictable you could literally set your calendar by them. Well, if your calendar lasted 3 decades, here's what makes these storms so beautifully peaceful despite their massive size. They're enormous. We're talking storms that can stretch wider than Earth itself, but they unfold with this slow, dreamy quality that feels almost meditative. The storm clouds build gradually, swirl around the planet in elegant spirals, and then slowly fade back into Saturn's golden atmosphere. The last big one happened from 2010 to 2011. Astronomers watched it grow from a tiny white dot into a band that completely encircled the entire planet. That's like a storm starting in New York and eventually wrapping around the whole Earth. Impressive? Absolutely. But it happened so gradually, so peacefully, that watching it felt more like meditation than witnessing chaos. But Saturn's geometric mysteries get even more fascinating when we look at its North Pole. At Saturn's North Pole sits one of the most bizarre and beautiful formations in our solar system. A perfectly hexagonal storm that's been spinning for decades. Yeah, you heard that right. A six-sided hurricane that looks like nature decided to try its hand at geometry. This isn't some small weather pattern either. Each side of this hexagon stretches about 9,300 miles across. That's wider than Earth itself. The whole thing could swallow our entire planet and still have room for dessert. But here's what makes it truly mesmerizing. It's been maintaining this perfect geometric shape for over 30 years. Most storms on Earth barely last a week before they fall apart. Saturn's hexagon just keeps spinning with mathematical precision, like a cosmic kaleidoscope that never stops turning. The winds along each edge race at about 200 miles per hour, yet somehow they maintain those crisp, straight lines. It's like watching a hurricane that went to art school and learned how to draw with a ruler. What causes this geometric perfection? Well, that's still one of Saturn's best-kept secrets. Scientists think it has something to do with the way rotating fluids behave, but the exact mechanism remains beautifully mysterious. This strange storm creates an almost hypnotic sense of order in the chaos of space. But Saturn's atmospheric wonders don't stop there. When you look at Saturn through a telescope, those cloud layers create something that looks impossibly soft, like someone took the fluffiest blankets in the universe and wrapped them around a giant planet. These aren't your typical Earth clouds, though. Saturn's atmosphere has multiple distinct layers, each one floating at different altitudes based on temperature and pressure. The top layer is made mostly of ammonia ice crystals. Below that, you'll find ammonium hydrosulfide clouds. Even deeper down, water. Ice clouds drift in the warmer regions. What makes this so mesmerizing? Each layer has its own color and texture. The ammonia clouds appear white and wispy. The deeper layers show those gorgeous golden and amber hues we love about Saturn. It's like looking at a cosmic layer cake that's been gently stirred. The best part is how these layers move at different speeds. Some bands race around the planet, while others drift lazily. This creates these beautiful, flowing patterns that seem to breathe with the planet itself. The pressure differences between layers are so gradual that there's no harsh boundaries. Everything blends together like watercolors on canvas. No sudden drops or jarring transitions, just gentle gradations that flow into each other. But what really powers these peaceful cloud formations are the winds that circle Saturn. Saturn's winds are absolutely wild. We're talking about speeds that would make any earthly hurricane look like a gentle summer breeze. These atmospheric rivers race around the planet at over 1,000 miles per hour. That's faster than the speed of sound. But here's what's fascinating. Despite these incredible velocities, there's something oddly peaceful about Saturn's wind patterns. Unlike Earth's chaotic weather systems that bump into mountains and continents, Saturn's winds flow in smooth, uninterrupted bands around the entire planet. No obstacles, just pure, continuous motion. The wind belts create those beautiful stripes we see in Saturn's atmosphere. Light bands alternate with darker ones, each moving at slightly different speeds. It's like watching cosmic rivers flowing at different paces, all perfectly parallel to each other. The faster winds actually help maintain Saturn's stunning appearance by keeping those cloud layers nicely separated. What really gets me is how these winds have been blowing for millions of years without stopping. While our weather changes daily, Saturn's atmospheric currents just keep flowing in their eternal patterns. There's something deeply calming about that consistency, isn't there? These same winds play a crucial role in distributing heat around the planet, creating the stable conditions that allow Saturn's incredible moon system to exist. Speaking of moons, one particular satellite stands out from all the rest. Meet Titan, Saturn's largest moon, and honestly the most Earth-like place you'll find anywhere else in our solar system. This isn't some barren rock floating in space. Titan actually has weather, seasons, and rivers flowing across its surface. What makes Titan so special? Well, it's the only moon in our entire solar system with a thick atmosphere. We're talking thicker than Earth's atmosphere. When you look at Titan, you can't even see the surface because of all those orange, hazy clouds swirling around. Makes you feel right at home, doesn't it? The atmosphere is mostly nitrogen, just like what we breathe here on Earth. Sure, there's no oxygen, but that familiar nitrogen gives Titan this weirdly comforting quality. It's like finding a distant cousin at a family reunion. But here's where Titan gets really interesting. Instead of water rivers and lakes, Titan has methane flowing everywhere. Liquid methane rivers carve through the landscape, creating deltas and lake systems that would look surprisingly familiar if you could peek through those thick clouds. The temperature sits at a chilly minus 290 degrees Fahrenheit. But somehow, Titan still manages to feel more welcoming than most places in space. Maybe it's those Earth-like processes happening in slow motion. Speaking of Titan's weather patterns, the way methane behaves, there creates something truly magical. Rain falls on Titan, but not the kind you'd expect. Instead of water droplets, methane precipitation creates the most alien weather system in our solar system. And honestly, it's surprisingly soothing when you think about it. These methane droplets are about twice the size of Earth's raindrops. They fall slowly through Titan's thick atmosphere, taking their sweet time to reach the surface. The whole process moves at a dreamy, leisurely pace that makes our Earth storms seem frantic by comparison. The rain doesn't happen often either. Some regions might wait decades between storms. When it finally arrives, it's like the universe's most patient weather system finally deciding to wake up from a long nap. Here's what makes it even more peaceful. The rain fills up lakes and rivers, just like home. Sure, they're made of liquid methane instead of water, but the familiar cycle of evaporation, clouds, and precipitation creates a comforting rhythm. Weather patterns that feel almost normal. The temperature stays around minus 290 degrees Fahrenheit, so this methane rain moves like thick syrup. Everything happens in slow motion, creating an almost meditative quality to Titan's weather cycles. But Titan isn't the only moon putting on a peaceful show in Saturn's neighborhood. Floating 600 million miles away from us, a tiny moon called Enceladus puts on one of the solar system's most peaceful light shows. This little ice world is barely 300 miles across, smaller than most countries, yet it creates something absolutely magical. Picture water shooting up from the surface like the world's most elegant fountains. But these aren't ordinary geysers. They're streams of pure water ice crystals erupting from mysterious cracks near Enceladus's south pole. These fissures have a wonderful nickname, tiger stripes. The whole thing works like a cosmic slow-motion fireworks display. Water from a hidden ocean beneath the ice gets pushed up through these cracks and sprays into space at about 800 miles per hour. Sounds violent? Actually, it's incredibly gentle by space standards. Here's what makes this even more amazing. That underground ocean might be twice as deep as Earth's oceans. We're talking about a world-spanning sea trapped beneath miles of ice, staying liquid thanks to Saturn's gravitational squeeze. It's like Saturn is giving Enceladus a constant warming hug. These water plumes create a thin atmosphere around the moon and actually feed Saturn's E-ring with fresh ice particles. The little moon is literally painting part of Saturn's ring system. But there's something even more intriguing hiding in Enceladus's depths that might change everything we thought we knew about life in space. Meet Mimas, Saturn's moon that literally looks like it's sleeping. This tiny world sports a massive crater called Herschel that makes it look exactly like a giant eye that's peacefully closed. Well, that's if you're feeling poetic about it. The crater spans about 1/3 of Mimas's entire diameter. That's like having a pothole the size of Texas on Earth. But instead of being jarring or frightening, there's something deeply comforting about this cosmic sleepy face floating through space. What makes this even more relaxing? Mimas got its nickname, the Death Star Moon, because of how it resembles that famous space station. But here's the funny part. This harmless little ice ball couldn't hurt a fly. It's basically the universe's version of a grumpy cat that looks mean but just wants to nap all day. The crater itself tells a peaceful story of survival. Whatever smashed into Mimas billions of years ago nearly shattered it completely. Yet here it sits, quietly orbiting Saturn like nothing happened. That's some serious cosmic resilience right there. This little moon reminds us how we naturally see faces and familiar shapes in everything around us. Our brains are wired to find comfort in the familiar, even when we're looking at alien worlds millions of miles away. But Mimas isn't the only moon with a split personality waiting to soothe us to sleep. Iapetus looks like someone took a cosmic paintbrush and decided to get creative. This moon is literally split down the middle with two completely different colors. One side is bright as fresh snow, while the other is dark as charcoal. What makes this even weirder? The dividing line between light and dark runs almost perfectly along the equator. It's like Saturn's moon is wearing a cosmic yin-yang costume that got stretched around a sphere. The bright side reflects sunlight beautifully, made of relatively clean ice. But the dark side? That's where things get mysterious. Scientists think it might be covered in material that slowly accumulated over millions of years, possibly dust from other moons, or even debris from space. Here's what's really mind-blowing, though. Iapetus rotates so slowly that one day there lasts 79 Earth days. That means if you stood on the dark side, you'd experience nearly 3 months of continuous night before seeing sunrise. The contrast creates this incredibly peaceful balance. Light and dark, bright and shadowy, fast and slow. It's like the universe decided to create the perfect symbol of harmony floating around Saturn. And speaking of peaceful moons, there's another one that takes serenity to a whole different level through simple, quiet dignity. Meet Rhea, Saturn's second largest moon, and perhaps its most dignified resident. While other moons grab headlines with geysers or methane lakes, Rhea just quietly exists in perfect contemplation. This ancient world sits there, covered in craters like wisdom lines on an old face. Each impact tells a story spanning billions of years. But here's what makes Rhea special. It doesn't try to be flashy. No dramatic storms, no mysterious hexagons, just peaceful, steady presence. The surface looks like someone took the moon and gave it a spa day. Smoother in some places, rougher in others, but always maintaining that serene, weathered beauty. Scientists think Rhea might even have its own tiny ring system. Imagine that. A moon with rings around a planet with rings. Talk about keeping it in the family. What really gets me is how Rhea rotates. It's tidally locked, meaning the same side always faces Saturn, like a loyal friend who never turns their back on you. The other side? Forever gazing into deep space, contemplating the cosmos. The temperatures hover around minus 200 degrees Fahrenheit, cold enough to make everything move in slow motion, creating this perpetual state of frozen meditation. But Rhea's true magic lies in something even more subtle. Its relationship with Saturn's magnetic field creates unique interactions that scientists are still unraveling. Deep in Saturn's neighborhood, something magical happens that would make any choreographer jealous. Meet Tethys and Dione, two moons locked in the most elegant dance you'll ever witness. But here's what makes it extraordinary. They're not dancing alone. These cosmic performers have tiny companions called Trojan moons. Helene follows Dione around like a devoted friend, staying exactly 60 degrees behind in the same orbit. Meanwhile, Tethys has not one, but two little buddies. Telesto leads the way 60 degrees ahead, while Calypso trails 60 degrees behind. Think of it like three cars driving around a racetrack, perfectly spaced and never catching up to each other. The physics behind this is wonderfully simple. These spots, called Lagrange points, are gravitational sweet spots where everything balances perfectly. No fuel needed, no course corrections required. Just pure cosmic harmony that's been going on for millions of years. What's beautifully peaceful about this arrangement? These moons will never crash into each other, ever. The mathematics of their dance guarantees it. While Tethys and Dione cruise along their orbital highways, their smaller companions ride the gravitational currents like cosmic surfers catching the perfect wave. But Saturn's family dynamics get even more intriguing when you discover how the planet's massive magnetosphere creates an invisible protective bubble around all these dancing worlds. Invisible force fields might sound like something from a superhero movie, but Saturn has one of the most impressive magnetic shields in our solar system. This cosmic bubble wraps around the entire planet and extends far out into space, creating a protective zone that's absolutely massive. Saturn's magnetic field is about 600 times stronger than Earth's. Pretty wild, right? It stretches out nearly 2 million kilometers from the planet's center, which means it easily encompasses most of Saturn's major moons. Think of it as a giant invisible umbrella that deflects harmful solar wind particles and cosmic radiation. But here's where things get beautifully peaceful. This magnetic cocoon doesn't just protect Saturn itself. It creates a safe haven for all those delicate ice particles in the rings and provides shelter for the moon family we've been exploring. Without this gentle guardian, the solar wind would gradually strip away ring material and bombard the moons with dangerous radiation. The magnetic field also generates some of the most spectacular light shows in the solar system. When charged particles from the Sun interact with Saturn's magnetosphere, they create stunning auroras at the planet's poles. These cosmic light displays dance across Saturn's atmosphere in brilliant blues and greens, though sadly, we can only see them through special ultraviolet cameras. What makes these magnetic auroras even more fascinating is how they actually produce sound. Saturn doesn't just look beautiful, it actually sounds incredible too. The planet produces natural radio waves that scientists have converted into audio, creating what sounds like otherworldly music drifting through space. These radio emissions happen when charged particles from the solar wind interact with Saturn's magnetic field. The result? Haunting tones that range from deep, whale-like calls to high-pitched whistles that could soundtrack the most peaceful meditation session ever recorded. But here's what makes it even more relaxing. Saturn's radio symphony changes with the planet's rotation, creating a gentle rhythm that pulses every 10 hours and 39 minutes. It's like the universe installed a cosmic metronome specifically designed to help you drift off to sleep. The Cassini spacecraft recorded these sounds for 13 years, essentially giving us over a decade of Saturn's greatest hits. Some frequencies sound like wind chimes made of starlight. Others resemble the gentle static of old radio broadcasts from distant galaxies. What's wild is that each of Saturn's moons adds its own voice to this celestial orchestra. Enceladus contributes crackling sounds from its ice geysers. Titan adds low-frequency hums from its thick atmosphere. Even the rings themselves generate subtle audio signatures as particles bump and dance around the planet. The strangest part? Saturn's radio waves follow the same mathematical patterns found in human music, suggesting the universe might have an innate sense of harmony. Speaking of harmony, Saturn's moons create their own version of celestial cooperation. Saturn doesn't just have a few moons hanging around like some lonely planets. This gas giant has collected an absolutely massive family of 146 confirmed moons. That's more than any other planet in our solar system. Well, technically, Jupiter might argue about that title, but Saturn's moon count keeps growing every year as astronomers spot new tiny ones hiding in the ring system. Some of these moons are barely bigger than city blocks, just quietly doing their orbital thing without bothering anyone. The variety is what makes Saturn's family so fascinating. You've got Titan, which is larger than Mercury and has lakes of liquid methane. Then there's tiny Pan, which is shaped like a ravioli and clears gaps in the rings. Seriously, it looks like cosmic pasta floating through space. But here's what's really peaceful about this whole setup. They all get along perfectly. No moon crashes into another. No dramatic orbital chaos. Each one has found its own comfortable spot in Saturn's gravitational embrace, like family members settling into their favorite chairs during a holiday dinner. The shepherd moons work together to keep the rings tidy. The larger moons maintain stable orbits that have lasted billions of years. Even the newest discoveries seem to slip right into place without disturbing the cosmic harmony. Speaking of harmony, the view from one particular moon offers something truly magical. Standing on Titan's surface would feel like stepping into an alien dream. The gravity pulls at just 14% of Earth's strength, making every step feel like you're bouncing on a cosmic trampoline. But here's what would truly take your breath away. If you could breathe methane, that is. Saturn dominates the sky above you. Absolutely dominates it. From Titan's distance, Saturn appears roughly 11 times larger than our moon looks from Earth. That's massive. The ringed giant stretches across a significant chunk of the orange-tinted sky, its rings cutting elegant lines through Titan's thick atmosphere. You'd never get tired of that view. The atmosphere around you glows with a warm amber light, like being inside a giant lampshade. Methane clouds drift lazily overhead, occasionally dropping liquid methane rain that feels strangely familiar, yet completely alien. The temperature sits at a bone-chilling minus 290 degrees Fahrenheit, but somehow the thick atmosphere makes everything feel cozy in its own weird way. Lakes of liquid methane stretch to the horizon, their surfaces rippling gently in Titan's light winds. The landscape looks surprisingly Earth-like, with river channels, shorelines, and weather patterns that would feel almost homey if they weren't made of hydrocarbons. Saturn watches over it all like a protective parent, its presence constant and reassuring. Speaking of Saturn's watchful presence, it's been doing this same protective dance for millions of years, maintaining perfect order in our night skies too. When you step outside on a clear night and look up, Saturn sits there like a steady golden beacon among the stars. It doesn't flash or flicker like some distant suns do, just hangs there, patient and calm. Ancient shepherds noticed this about Saturn thousands of years ago. While other planets seemed to dance around the sky, Saturn moved with the grace of someone who had all the time in the world. No rushing, no erratic behavior, just a slow, dignified journey across the heavens that took decades to complete. The Babylonians called it the Old Man of the Heavens. Makes sense, right? Saturn has this wise, grandfather-like presence that seems to anchor the night sky. Even when everything else in your life feels chaotic, Saturn's there, doing its thing with cosmic reliability. But here's what's really beautiful about Saturn in our night sky. You can actually see those famous rings through a decent telescope. Not just the planet itself, but the whole magnificent system. Suddenly, that tiny golden dot transforms into something that looks like it was designed by a cosmic artist with infinite patience. The Romans named it after their god of time and agriculture. Both perfect choices, really. Saturn teaches us about the slow, steady rhythms that govern everything. And speaking of time, Saturn's rotation reveals another layer of gentle mystery. Measuring time on Saturn feels like trying to time a spinning cloud, which honestly isn't far from the truth. Saturn rotates once every 10 hours and 42 minutes. That's less than half an Earth day. But here's the tricky part. Saturn doesn't have a solid surface to watch spin around. No mountains, no landmarks, nothing to mark. Okay, there's one complete rotation. Instead, astronomers had to get creative. They listened to Saturn's radio waves, like cosmic Morse code tapping out the planet's heartbeat. These magnetic pulses repeat in a steady rhythm, revealing Saturn's true rotation period. The Cassini spacecraft spent years fine-tuning this measurement. Turns out, Saturn's rotation is slowing down, just slightly. We're talking about adding 6 minutes to Saturn's day over the course of 20 years. That's cosmic-level patience right there. What's wild is that Saturn's equator spins faster than its poles because it's made of gas. The whole planet flows like honey, with different layers moving at their own comfortable pace. Some parts take 11 hours, others finish in 10. Saturn's rapid spin creates that lovely flattened shape, like a cosmic stress ball that's been gently squeezed. This quick rotation also helps generate those beautiful wind patterns we see swirling across the planet. But even with all this spinning action, there's something deeply meditative about Saturn's ancient rhythm. Speaking of ancient, observations. Early astronomers had no idea they were watching such complexity. Galileo Galilei pointed his primitive telescope at Saturn in 1610, and what he saw almost broke his brilliant mind. The poor guy thought he was losing it. Saturn appeared to have handles or ears sticking out from its sides, like a cosmic coffee mug floating in space. His telescope wasn't powerful enough to resolve the rings properly. So naturally, he concluded Saturn must be a triple planet. 3 worlds somehow stuck together in the strangest cosmic sandwich he'd ever witnessed. Can you imagine his confusion? But here's what makes this story absolutely delightful. When Galileo looked again, 2 years later, the handles had completely vanished. Saturn appeared perfectly round and boring. The great astronomer was genuinely baffled. Had the universe played some cosmic joke on him? Well, Saturn's rings had simply tilted edge-on toward Earth, making them invisible to his weak telescope. The planet's 27-degree axial tilt means we see the rings from different angles as Saturn orbits the Sun. Sometimes they're wide open like a dinner plate. Other times they disappear entirely, thin as a razor blade. Galileo never lived to understand what he'd actually discovered. He died still puzzled by Saturn's mysterious disappearing act. His confusion launched centuries of peaceful observation and wonder. Speaking of patient observation, the real breakthrough came when much better telescopes finally revealed what those mysterious handles actually were. The Voyager missions pulled off one of the most graceful cosmic encounters in human history. When Voyager 1 flew by Saturn in 1980, it was like watching a ballet dancer execute a perfect pirouette around the ringed giant. No crashes, no drama, just pure elegance. But here's what makes this even more amazing. These spacecraft were basically flying computers from the 70s, with less processing power than your smartphone's calculator. Yet they managed to capture images that still take our breath away today. Talk about overachieving. Voyager 2 followed up a year later, and between them, these twin explorers revealed Saturn's secrets with the patience of a Zen master. They discovered new moons hiding in the rings. They found braided ring structures that shouldn't exist according to physics textbooks. Well, they do exist, so the textbooks got some updates. The most peaceful part? These encounters happened across millions of miles of empty space, with signals taking over an hour to reach Earth. Mission controllers had to trust their spacecraft to make the right decisions. And they did, flawlessly. The images they sent back transformed Saturn from a fuzzy blob in telescopes into a real world with personality. Suddenly, this distant planet felt like a place you could visit, not just observe. Speaking of extended visits, one spacecraft would eventually move in permanently to study Saturn's neighborhood for over a decade. The Cassini spacecraft spent 13 years living at Saturn, becoming the planet's most dedicated observer. Unlike the quick flyby visits from Voyager, Cassini settled into orbit and made Saturn its home from 2004 to 2017. What makes this mission so peaceful to think about? Well, Cassini basically became Saturn's roommate. For over a decade, this robotic explorer gracefully circled the ringed planet, taking its time to study every moon, every ring feature, every atmospheric storm. No rushing around, just patient, methodical observation. The spacecraft performed 294 orbits around Saturn. That's like taking the scenic route 294 times, each loop revealing new secrets. Some orbits brought Cassini close to the rings, where it could almost touch the ice particles. Other times, it swung out to visit the moons, dropping off the Huygens probe at Titan like a cosmic taxi service. But here's what's really soothing about Cassini's journey. Every single day for 13 years, this little spacecraft faithfully sent back images and data. Rain or shine, solar storm, or calm space weather, Cassini kept working. Talk about reliability. The mission ended with Cassini diving into Saturn's atmosphere, becoming part of the planet it studied for so long. Even Saturn's radio waves seemed to sing a different tune during those final moments. Picture billions of ice crystals, each no bigger than a snowball, gracefully spinning around Saturn at 17,000 miles per hour. Sounds chaotic? Actually, it's the most perfectly choreographed dance in our solar system. Every single ring particle follows the exact same rules of physics. The closer they orbit to Saturn, the faster they move. It's like a cosmic highway with multiple speed limits. Inner lanes zooming past, while outer lanes cruise more leisurely. Yet somehow, nobody crashes. Well, almost nobody. Occasionally, particles do bump into each other. But here's the beautiful part. They bounce off gently, like bumper cars made of ice cream. These collisions actually help keep the rings flat and organized. Pretty neat system, right? The math behind this celestial waltz would make your calculator weep. Each particle responds to Saturn's massive gravitational pull, while also feeling tiny tugs from nearby particles and distant moons. It's like trying to dance while juggling, except these ice chunks have been doing it flawlessly for millions of years. What really blows my mind is the synchronization. Trillions of individual pieces moving in perfect harmony without a conductor, without practice, without ever missing a beat. They just follow the invisible sheet music written by gravity itself. But there's something even more mesmerizing about how these particles stay organized into distinct rings. Saturn's seasons unfold like the world's slowest meditation retreat. While Earth races through its yearly cycle in 365 days, Saturn takes almost 30 Earth years to complete one orbit around the Sun. That's not a typo. 30 years for a single Saturn year. Each season on Saturn lasts about 7.5 Earth years. When you were born, Saturn was probably in a completely different season than it is today. The planet's axial tilt of 27 degrees creates these extended seasonal shifts, similar to Earth's tilt, but stretched across decades instead of months. During Saturn's winter, one hemisphere receives less sunlight for years on end. The atmosphere gradually cools, and the beautiful amber clouds shift their patterns ever so slowly. It's like watching paint dry, except the paint is a massive planet and the canvas is space itself. But here's what makes it fascinating. Saturn's rings change appearance with the seasons too. As the planet tilts toward and away from the sun, we get different viewing angles of those magnificent rings from Earth. Sometimes they appear wide open, like a cosmic dinner plate. Other times, they edge-turn nearly invisible. The ring particles themselves experience seasonal temperature variations, expanding and contracting like celestial breathing. Even Saturn's hexagonal storm at the North Pole shifts color with the changing seasons. Speaking of shadows, wait until you see how Saturn creates the most beautiful shadow puppet show in space. When Saturn passes between the Sun and its rings, something magical happens. the planet casts a massive shadow across its own ring system, creating one of the most breathtaking displays in our solar system. It's like watching a cosmic eclipse in slow motion. This shadow isn't just a simple dark spot. Saturn's rings are tilted at about 27 degrees, so the shadow sweeps across them at an angle, creating dramatic bands of light and darkness. Some sections of the rings remain brilliantly lit, while others fall into deep shadow. The contrast is absolutely stunning. What makes this even more fascinating? The shadow reveals details we can't see any other way. When ring particles are backlit by the sun, they glow like scattered diamonds. But in Saturn's shadow, we can spot the densest parts of the rings more clearly. It's nature's own way of highlighting the ring structure. The shadow moves slowly across the rings as Saturn rotates. Remember, a day on Saturn lasts just over 10 hours, so this shadow dance happens relatively quickly compared to our earthly time frame. Yet from our perspective, it feels beautifully gradual. But Saturn's shadow play gets even more interesting when you consider what the moons are doing during these moments. Deep within Saturn's magnificent rings, tiny worlds hide in plain sight. These moonlets are so small, you could drive across most of them in less than an hour, yet they play crucial roles in maintaining the ring system's delicate architecture. Pan, one of these embedded treasures, measures just 22 miles across. But don't let its size fool you. This little moon acts like a cosmic Zamboni, clearing out the Enki gap as it orbits through the A-ring. The gravitational wake it leaves behind creates gorgeous spiral patterns that ripple outward like frozen waves. Then there's Daphnis, even tinier at just 5 miles wide. This pint-sized moon carves through the outer edge of the A-ring, creating undulating waves that look like cosmic ribbon candy. The vertical height of these waves can reach over half a mile, which sounds modest until you remember we're talking about disturbances in a ring system that's normally flatter than a pancake. Atlas deserves special mention for looking absolutely ridiculous. Picture a flying saucer that someone sat on. Its equatorial ridge formed from ring material sticking to its surface over millions of years, creating what astronomers politely call an unusual shape. These hidden moonlets prove that even in the vastness of space, the smallest residents often have the biggest personalities. Speaking of personalities, Saturn's formation story holds some equally surprising characters. 4.6 billion years ago, Saturn didn't exist. Well, not as we know it today anyway. Back then, our entire solar system was just a massive spinning disk of gas and dust. Think cosmic cotton candy, but way less sweet and infinitely more explosive. The sun had just finished forming in the center, gobbling up most of the available material like a hungry teenager at an all-you-can-eat buffet. But Saturn? Saturn was patient. While Jupiter rushed to form first, hogging the closest materials, Saturn took its time further out in the cooler regions of the solar system. The temperature was just right for water to freeze, creating tiny ice crystals that would eventually become crucial building blocks. Here's where things get really fascinating. Saturn didn't just gradually collect material like you might stack blocks. Instead, it went through distinct phases of growth, almost like a cosmic teenager having growth spurts. First came the slow accumulation of rock and ice, building what we call the planetary core. This process took millions of years. No rushing, no drama, just steady, methodical growth. Then came the gas collection phase. Once Saturn's core reached about 10 Earth masses, its gravity became strong enough to start pulling in hydrogen and helium from the surrounding nebula. This happened surprisingly quickly in cosmic terms. But even Saturn's violent birth eventually settled into the peaceful giant we observe today, complete with those magnificent rings that would form much later. Saturn's rings might actually be the remains of a moon that got too close for comfort. Wild, right? This isn't some crazy conspiracy theory either. The evidence points to a fascinating cosmic tragedy that played out over millions of years. Picture a moon about the size of our own, quietly orbiting Saturn in the ancient past. Everything's peaceful until gravitational forces start pulling it apart, piece by piece. The poor moon crossed something called the Roche limit, basically Saturn's personal space bubble where tidal forces become deadly. But here's what makes this destruction oddly beautiful. The moon didn't just explode dramatically like in movies. Instead, it slowly unraveled like a cosmic sweater. Chunks broke off gradually, spreading into the gorgeous ring system we see today. Some researchers think this happened relatively recently in cosmic terms, maybe just 100 million years ago. That's practically yesterday, when you're dealing with a planet that's 4.5 billion years old. The math actually works out perfectly. A mid-sized icy moon contains exactly the right amount of material to create Saturn's entire ring system. It's like the universe's most elegant recycling program. This peaceful transformation shows how even cosmic destruction can create something breathtakingly beautiful. Speaking of gravitational relationships, Saturn's dance with its neighbor Jupiter reveals even more cosmic choreography. Jupiter and Saturn are like the universe's most polite neighbors. They've been doing this gravitational waltz for over 4 billion years, and neither has stepped on the other's toes. Well, not literally. They're still about 350 million miles apart at their closest approach. But here's what makes their relationship absolutely fascinating. These two gas giants actually help each other stay calm. Jupiter, being the bigger brother, acts like a cosmic vacuum cleaner, sweeping up asteroids and comets that might otherwise cause chaos. Saturn? It returns the favor by keeping Jupiter's orbit nice and stable. Their gravitational pull creates what astronomers call a resonance. Every time Jupiter completes about 5 orbits around the Sun, Saturn finishes roughly 2. It's like they're dancing to the same slow cosmic rhythm. This isn't coincidence. It's celestial choreography that's been perfected over eons. The really peaceful part? This relationship protects us down here on Earth. Without Saturn's stabilizing influence on Jupiter, our solar system's architecture would be completely different. Jupiter might wander closer to the Sun, potentially ejecting smaller planets into space. Instead, we get this beautiful balance. 2 giant worlds, each massive enough to be stars in their own right, choosing cooperation over chaos. Speaking of cooperation, wait until you discover how Saturn's own predictable nature creates the most reassuring presence in our night sky. There's something deeply reassuring about Saturn that goes beyond its obvious beauty. While everything else in our lives feels chaotic and unpredictable, Saturn just keeps doing its thing with clockwork precision. Think about it. Every single day for the past 4.5 billion years, Saturn has been quietly orbiting the Sun at exactly the same pace. No sudden mood swings, no dramatic course corrections, just pure, unwavering consistency that makes a Swiss watch look unreliable. Saturn's rings? They've been spinning in perfect formation longer than life has existed on Earth. Those ice particles know exactly where they're supposed to be, and they stay there. Meanwhile, we can't even keep our car keys in the same spot for 2 days straight. Even Saturn's moons follow their schedules better than most people follow their morning routines. Titan completes its orbit every 16 days like clockwork. Enceladus shoots its water geysers on schedule. Everything just works. This reliability isn't boring. It's profoundly comforting. In a universe full of exploding stars and colliding galaxies, Saturn represents the peaceful constant we all crave. It's like having that one friend who's always exactly where they said they'd be, doing exactly what they promised. But here's what makes Saturn even more special for us here on Earth. Want to see Saturn for yourself? You absolutely can, and it's easier than you might think. Saturn sits out there, roughly 900 million miles away, yet it's bright enough to spot with just your naked eyes. No telescope required. Look for a steady, cream-colored dot that doesn't twinkle like the stars do. Planets shine with calm, unwavering light. The best viewing happens during opposition, when Earth sits perfectly between Saturn and the Sun. This cosmic alignment occurs roughly every 12.5 months. Saturn appears brightest and stays visible all night long during these periods. But here's where things get really exciting. Even a small backyard telescope reveals Saturn's magnificent rings. That first glimpse through an eyepiece? Pure magic. The planet transforms from a simple dot into something that looks almost too perfect to be real. Amateur astronomers often describe Saturn watching as deeply meditative. There's something profoundly calming about tracking this distant giant across the sky, night after night. The planet moves slowly against the background stars, changing position just slightly over weeks and months. Many people find themselves returning to Saturn again and again through their telescopes. Each viewing session brings new details into focus. Different atmospheric bands become visible. The ring system reveals subtle divisions and variations. However, Saturn's true mythological significance runs much deeper than simple observation. Ancient Romans had a funny relationship with Saturn. They literally named their most chill day of the week after this planet. Saturday comes from Saturn's day, which makes perfect sense when you think about it. This distant, slow-moving world became their symbol for taking things easy. But here's what's fascinating about Saturn in mythology. The Romans called it Saturnus, after their god of agriculture and time. Not the rushing, frantic kind of time we obsess over today. Nope. Saturn represented the slow, patient time of seasons changing and crops growing. The kind of time that doesn't stress you out. Greek mythology tells an even more interesting story. They called Saturn Kronos, which literally means time. But Kronos wasn't checking his watch every 5 minutes. He was the Titan who understood that some things simply can't be rushed. Harvest comes when harvest comes. Winter ends when winter ends. Ancient astronomers noticed something special about Saturn's movement across the sky. While other planets zipped around relatively quickly, Saturn took its sweet time. Nearly 30 years to complete one journey through the zodiac. That's patience on a cosmic level. Different cultures saw Saturn as the wise elder of the planets, the one that taught lessons about waiting, watching, and finding peace in life's slower rhythms. Speaking of rhythms, there's something mesmerizing about how Saturn maintains its position as the solar system's ultimate boundary keeper. The Roche limit sounds like something from a fancy physics textbook, but it's actually one of the most important invisible boundaries in our solar system. Well, what exactly is it? Picture Saturn as a cosmic bulldozer with an invisible fence around it. Cross that line as a moon, and you're getting ripped apart. That's the Roche limit, the point where Saturn's gravity becomes so strong that any moon venturing too close gets torn into tiny pieces by tidal forces. Here's where it gets fascinating. Saturn's rings exist almost entirely within this dangerous zone. Those billions of ice particles we've been talking about, they're basically the remains of moons that either wandered too close or formed in the wrong neighborhood. Makes you wonder if Saturn's rings are actually a cosmic graveyard, doesn't it? The math behind this boundary is surprisingly elegant. French astronomer Edouard Roche figured out that this critical distance sits at about 2.5 times Saturn's radius. Any closer, and tidal forces win. Any farther out, and moons can hold themselves together just fine. But here's the beautiful part. This destructive force creates something gorgeous. The Roche limit doesn't just destroy, it organizes. Ring particles within this zone can never clump together to form new moons, keeping them in their eternal, mesmerizing dance. Speaking of cosmic organization, there's one tiny moon that's managed to survive right in the middle of this chaos. Meet Pan, Saturn's tiniest moon with the biggest attitude. This little guy is only about 22 miles across, but don't let that fool you. Pan has one of the most important jobs in Saturn's entire ring system. What's this cosmic custodian doing exactly? Well, Pan lives inside the Enki Gap, which is basically a 400-mile-wide empty lane carved right through Saturn's A-ring. Think of it like a cosmic snowplow that never stops working. Pan's gravity might be weak, but it's perfectly positioned to sweep up any ring particles that dare to drift into its territory. The result? A beautifully clean gap that stays pristine year after year. This process is called gravitational shepherding, and Pan takes its job seriously. But here's where Pan gets really interesting. This moon isn't round like you'd expect. Instead, it looks like a flying saucer, or maybe a cosmic ravioli. That weird shape comes from collecting ring material around its equator over millions of years. The collected ice and rock particles have built up into a ridge that wraps around Pan's middle, giving it that distinctive UFO appearance. It's like Saturn's rings decided to give Pan a little belt as a thank you gift for all the hard work. Speaking of temperature, there's something fascinating about how Saturn's internal heat affects everything around it. Here's something that'll blow your mind about Saturn. This massive planet is actually keeping itself warm like a cosmic heater. While you're bundling up in winter, Saturn's pumping out twice as much heat as it gets from the sun. That's like your house generating more energy than your electric bill. Deep inside Saturn's core, temperatures reach around 20,000 degrees Fahrenheit. That's hotter than the surface of the sun, folks. But here's what makes it so relaxing. This heat doesn't blast outward violently. Instead, it rises gently through thousands of miles of atmosphere, creating the most gradual temperature gradient you can imagine. Think about your perfect bath water. Too hot? Painful. Too cold? Shocking. But Saturn's got this whole temperature thing figured out. As you move from its blazing core to the chilly cloud tops at minus 280 degrees, the heat drops off smoothly. No sudden temperature shocks. Just a peaceful transition from toasty warm to refreshingly cool. This gentle heat flow creates those beautiful cloud bands we love so much. Warm gas rises, cool gas sinks, all in perfect rhythm. It's like Saturn's breathing, inhaling and exhaling heat in slow, meditative cycles that have continued for billions of years. But Saturn's internal warmth does something even more magical for its neighborhood of moons. Deep inside Saturn, something incredible happens that sounds like a gentle bedtime story. Helium rain falls through the planet's interior. Yes, you heard that right. It actually rains helium inside Saturn. But this isn't rain like we know it. When Saturn formed billions of years ago, helium and hydrogen mixed together like ingredients in a cosmic soup. Over time, as Saturn cooled down, something fascinating started happening. The helium began separating from the hydrogen, kind of like how oil separates from water if you let it sit long enough. Here's where it gets beautiful. The helium droplets become heavy enough to sink slowly through Saturn's hydrogen atmosphere. They fall like the world's most expensive precipitation, drifting downward toward the core in a process that takes millions of years. Talk about patience. This helium rain actually explains why Saturn glows warmer than it should. As those tiny helium droplets fall, they release energy through friction. It's like the planet has its own internal heating system, powered by the gentlest rainstorm in the solar system. The whole process is so gradual and peaceful. No thunder, no lightning, just countless helium droplets making their slow journey towards Saturn's heart. This invisible weather system has been running for billions of years, creating a kind of thermal comfort that radiates outward. Speaking of Saturn's intricate beauty, wait until you discover the braided masterpiece floating in its outer rings. Saturn's F-ring sits like a delicate piece of cosmic jewelry, barely 20 miles wide, but stretching around the entire planet. What makes it absolutely mesmerizing? It's braided. Literally braided, like someone took 3 cosmic ropes and wove them together in space. Most rings are simple bands of particles orbiting peacefully. But the F-ring, it's got personality. The ice particles clump together, separate, twist around each other, then merge again. It's like watching a slow-motion cosmic dance where the music never stops. The braiding happens because of gravitational nudges from tiny moons nearby. These gravitational bumps push ring particles into weird orbits, creating gaps, knots, in those gorgeous braided sections. Sometimes the braid is tight and perfect. Other times, it looks like someone's cat got into the cosmic yarn basket. Here's what's wild about this ring. It changes constantly. Photos taken just hours apart show completely different patterns. The F-ring is basically Saturn's mood ring, always shifting and rearranging itself. The individual strands can be hundreds of miles apart, then suddenly merge into one thick band. It's unpredictable chaos following precise mathematical rules. Makes sense, right? Even cosmic jewelry needs a little attitude. But the F-ring's most impressive feature isn't its braided beauty. It's the 2 tiny moons that create all this magnificent mayhem. Prometheus and Pandora sound like characters from a Greek tragedy. But these 2 tiny moons are actually Saturn's most dedicated ring sculptors. They work together like cosmic artists, constantly reshaping Saturn's narrow F-ring into something that looks like braided rope floating in space. These moons are ridiculously small. Prometheus stretches about 60 miles long, while Pandora measures roughly 50. That's smaller than most cities. Yet their gravitational influence creates some of the most intricate patterns in Saturn's entire ring system. The F-ring sits right between these 2 shepherd moons, and boy, do they keep it busy. Prometheus orbits slightly inside the ring, while Pandora patrols the outside edge. Every time Prometheus catches up to a slower moving section of ring material, It gives those ice particles a gentle gravitational nudge. The result? Beautiful streamers and clumps that twist and spiral like cosmic taffy. But here's where things get really wild. The ring doesn't stay perfectly organized. Sometimes the shepherding gets a bit chaotic, creating knots and braids that would make any sailor jealous. These patterns constantly change as the moons continue their eternal dance. The whole system reminds me of two gardeners pruning a hedge, except their hedge is made of ice particles traveling 17,000 miles per hour. Not exactly your typical landscaping job, right? Speaking of Saturn's artistic side, the planet puts on some pretty spectacular light shows too. Picture Saturn's poles during a cosmic storm, and you'll witness something that puts Earth's northern lights to shame. These aren't your typical green curtains dancing across the sky. Saturn's auroras glow in ultraviolet light, invisible to our eyes, but absolutely breathtaking when captured by space telescopes. What makes Saturn's light shows so special? Well, they're powered by the same solar wind that creates our auroras, but Saturn's massive magnetosphere turns this into something far more spectacular. The charged particles get funneled towards Saturn's magnetic poles, where they slam into the thin atmosphere and create these ethereal displays. But here's where Saturn gets really creative. Unlike Earth's auroras that flicker and fade, Saturn's can persist for days. They're like cosmic mood lighting that never gets turned off. The planet's rapid rotation, remember that 10-hour day, means these light shows are constantly shifting and evolving. The best part is how gentle they appear. No violent flashing or chaotic bursts. Just smooth, flowing ribbons of light that pulse with Saturn's magnetic heartbeat. Even Saturn's storms are somehow peaceful, wrapping around the poles like a luminous blanket. These auroras stretch hundreds of miles high, creating halos that would make any angel jealous. But Saturn's atmospheric drama doesn't stop with these gentle light displays. Back in 2010, Saturn decided to throw the biggest atmospheric tantrum in 30 years. Well, not really a tantrum, more like a cosmic sneeze that lasted almost a year. This massive white storm started as a tiny bright spot near Saturn's North Pole. Within weeks, it had grown into a churning beast that completely wrapped around the entire planet. Picture a hurricane so huge it could swallow Earth dozens of times over, stretching 43,000 miles across Saturn's surface. The storm moved at incredible speeds, too, racing along Saturn's jet streams at over 1,000 miles per hour. It looked like someone had painted a thick white stripe around the planet's middle. Amateur astronomers on Earth could actually see this thing through their backyard telescopes. That's how enormous it became. But here's what makes Saturn storms so beautifully different from Earth hurricanes. While our storms rage for days or maybe weeks, Saturn takes its time. This gentle giant let its great white storm slowly churn and evolve for nearly 11 months before finally calming down. The storm eventually ate its own tail, so to speak, meeting up with itself after circling the planet. Then it gradually faded away, leaving Saturn looking peaceful once again. Even Saturn's biggest tantrums end in tranquility. Speaking of Saturn's atmospheric layers, there's something wonderfully organized about how this planet arranges its weather. Methane might sound like something you'd rather not think about before bedtime, but on Saturn, it's actually part of what makes the planet so beautiful. Just tiny traces of this simple molecule float through Saturn's atmosphere, helping create those gorgeous golden and amber colors we love so much. The amount we're talking about is incredibly small, less than 0.5% of Saturn's entire atmosphere. That's like adding a single drop of food coloring to a swimming pool. But sometimes the smallest ingredients make the biggest difference, right? What's fascinating is how methane absorbs red light while letting other colors pass through. This selective filtering is what gives Saturn that warm, honey-colored glow that feels so comforting to look at. Without methane, Saturn would look much more bland and gray, not nearly as soothing. The methane molecules up there are doing a slow, endless dance with Saturn's other atmospheric gases. Hydrogen and helium dominate the mix, but methane adds that special touch of character. It's like the vanilla extract in cosmic cookie dough. These simple carbon and hydrogen atoms have been floating around Saturn for billions of years, patiently contributing to the planet's serene appearance. They're not going anywhere anytime soon either. Speaking of things that change Saturn's appearance, the planet's rings actually shift how they look from Earth throughout Saturn's long journey around the Sun. As Saturn slowly travels around the Sun, something magical happens to those famous rings. They don't just sit there looking the same all the time. Every 14.5 years, Earth gets treated to a spectacular vanishing act. The rings appear to disappear completely from our view. One moment they're there in all their glory. The next moment Saturn looks like a boring marble floating in space. This cosmic hide-and-seek happens because Saturn tilts on its axis, just like Earth does. But here's the twist. As Saturn moves through its 29-year orbit, we see the rings from different angles. Sometimes we're looking down at them, like viewing a dinner plate from above. Other times, we see them edge on, which is when they seem to vanish. The rings are incredibly thin. We're talking about something that stretches hundreds of thousands of miles across, but is only about 30 feet thick in most places. When viewed edge on, it's like trying to see a sheet of paper from the side while standing across a football field. Ancient astronomers must have thought Saturn was playing tricks on them. Galileo famously saw Saturn's ears disappear and reappear, not knowing he was witnessing this gentle celestial breathing. But Saturn's got even more tricks up its sleeve when it comes to temperature changes. Those magnificent rings spinning around Saturn, they won't be there forever. In fact, they're slowly disappearing right before our eyes. Well, not exactly before our eyes, since the process takes millions of years. But still, it's happening. The ice particles that make up those gorgeous rings are gradually spiraling inward toward Saturn itself. Think of it like a cosmic drain, except instead of water going down, it's billions of ice chunks taking the ultimate plunge. The culprit here is something called ring rain. Sounds peaceful, doesn't it? Saturn's magnetic field grabs tiny ring particles and pulls them down into the planet's atmosphere. About 10,000 pounds of ring material falls into Saturn every single second. That might sound like a lot, but when you're dealing with rings that weigh as much as Saturn's moon Mimas, it's more like watching a glacier melt in slow motion. Scientists estimate the rings could completely vanish in just 100 million years. Sure, that's longer than humans have existed, but in cosmic terms, that's practically next Tuesday. The weirdest part? This gentle cosmic disappearing act means we're living during a pretty special time. We get front row seats to one of the universe's most beautiful temporary art installations. But while the rings slowly fade away, there's something else creating its own spectacular show. Saturn's rings aren't just made of ice. They're a cosmic junkyard with the most incredible size range you can imagine. We're talking particles smaller than sugar grains dancing alongside chunks bigger than your house. How's that for variety? The tiniest bits are practically dust. Microscopic ice crystals that catch sunlight like glitter scattered across the void. But here's where things get wild. Some ring particles are the size of boulders, cars, even small buildings. Picture a chunk of ice the size of a garage tumbling gracefully through space at thousands of miles per hour. That's just Tuesday in Saturn's neighborhood. What makes this size diversity so fascinating? Well, it's like having a giant cosmic sieve that somehow works in reverse. Instead of separating particles by size, Saturn's gravity keeps them all dancing together. The house-sized chunks don't bulldoze through the smaller ones. They all follow the same orbital rules, creating this impossible harmony. The bigger particles actually help shape the rings. They act like cosmic shepherds, using their tiny gravitational pulls to keep smaller particles in line. It's like having millions of traffic cops made of ice, each one maintaining perfect order without ever getting a citation. But there's something even more mysterious about how these different sizes stay organized, and it involves invisible forces that would make any physicist lose sleep. Humans have been staring up at Saturn for thousands of years, long before anyone knew it had rings. Ancient Babylonian astronomers called it Lubadzagush, the oldest of the old. They noticed something peculiar about this golden dot wandering slowly across their night sky. Unlike the moon that raced around every month, or even Mars that moved at a decent pace, Saturn took its sweet time. 29 and a half years to complete one lap around the sun. The ancients found this oddly comforting. Here was a celestial body that understood the value of taking things slow. Greek astronomers named it after Kronos, the titan of time itself. Romans switched it to Saturn, their god of agriculture and harvest. Both cultures associated it with patience, wisdom, and the steady passage of seasons. Makes sense when you think about it. Watching Saturn teach you that some of the most beautiful things in life can't be rushed. Chinese astronomers called it the Earth Star because of its yellowish color. They used Saturn's position to track long-term cycles and plan agricultural seasons. Imagine using a planet over 1 billion miles away as your cosmic calendar. The funny thing is, all these ancient observers were looking at Saturn's rings without knowing it. They just saw a slightly fuzzy, warm-colored star that refused to hurry. But even mysterious fuzzy objects have their own special charm in space. Picture this wild moment in space history. January 14th, 2005. A small European probe called Huygens was about to do something absolutely bonkers. Land on an alien moon over 700 million miles from Earth. The descent through Titan's thick orange atmosphere took 2.5 hours. That's longer than most movies. The little probe floated down on its parachute like a dandelion seed, taking pictures and measurements the whole way down. Makes you wonder what it felt like to be humanity's first visitor to this distant world. When Huygens finally touched down, it landed on what felt like wet sand mixed with pebbles. The surface was surprisingly solid, not the methane ocean scientists thought it might hit. Talk about cosmic luck. The probe kept transmitting for over an hour after landing, sending back sounds and images from Titan's surface. Those first pictures showed rounded rocks scattered across a dark landscape. Everything looked smooth and weathered, like stones on a beach after thousands of years of gentle waves. The whole scene had this dreamlike quality, familiar, yet completely alien. The most incredible part? This mission represented peaceful cooperation between NASA and the European Space Agency. Different countries working together to explore Saturn's mysterious moon. But there's something even more fascinating about how this landing revealed Titan's secrets. Saturn doesn't just mind its own business out there in the cold depths of space. This giant planet actually plays cosmic traffic cop for our entire solar system, especially when it comes to asteroids. Think about it like this. You know how a bouncer at a club decides who gets in and who doesn't? Well, Saturn does something similar with space rocks. Its massive gravitational pull reaches far beyond its rings, creating invisible highways and roadblocks that asteroids have to follow. The Kirkwood gaps in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter? Saturn helped create those empty lanes. These are spots where asteroids just can't hang out for long because Saturn's gravity keeps tugging them into different orbits. It's like musical chairs, but the music never stops, and Saturn keeps removing chairs. But here's where Saturn gets really clever. Sometimes it actually protects us by flinging dangerous asteroids away from the inner solar system. Other times, it gently nudges space rocks into safer, more stable orbits. Makes sense, right? Saturn even influences the Trojan asteroids that share Jupiter's orbit. These little space hitchhikers exist partly because Saturn's gravitational influence helps keep them locked in their cosmic dance with Jupiter. This invisible influence extends billions of miles, quietly organizing our neighborhood. Speaking of Saturn's far-reaching effects, wait until you hear how its rings actually create their own kind of music. You know how musicians talk about finding harmony in sound? Well, Saturn's rings create their own cosmic symphony, and it's absolutely mind-blowing. The ring particles don't just orbit randomly. They form density waves that behave exactly like sound waves moving through air. These waves ripple through the ring material when gravitational forces from Saturn's moons tug at different sections. It's like dropping a pebble in a perfectly still pond, except the pond is made of billions of ice chunks spinning around a gas giant. The mathematical patterns are identical to musical harmonics. Here's where it gets wild. If you could somehow hear these density waves, Saturn would be playing a constant chord progression. The resonances create specific frequencies based on orbital mechanics. Some sections of the rings vibrate at ratios that would sound absolutely beautiful to human ears. The spacing between ring gaps follows the same mathematical relationships you'd find in a perfectly tuned piano. 2-to-1 ratios, 3-to-2 ratios, all the combinations that make music sound pleasant instead of chaotic. What makes this even more fascinating is that Saturn doesn't know it's making music. It's just physics doing what physics does best, creating order from apparent chaos. But there's one tiny moon that's conducting this entire cosmic orchestra in ways you'd never expect. Deep within Saturn's ring system lives a tiny moon called Daphnis, barely 11 miles across. You could drive around its entire circumference in about an hour. But don't let its size fool you. This little guy punches way above its weight class. Daphnis orbits right inside the Keeler Gap, a narrow space in Saturn's A-ring that's only about 26 miles wide. As it travels along this cosmic highway, something magical happens. The moon's gravity reaches out like invisible hands, gently tugging on the ring particles nearby. These ice chunks respond by creating beautiful, scalloped waves along the gap's edges. It's like watching someone draw delicate lace patterns in space. What makes this even cooler? The waves aren't random. They follow Daphnis as it moves, creating a constantly shifting masterpiece that stretches for thousands of miles. The ring particles literally dance to this tiny moon's gravitational beat. Sometimes Daphnis moves slightly above or below the ring plane during its orbit. When this happens, the waves become three-dimensional, creating vertical ripples that look like cosmic curtains swaying in an ethereal breeze. It's incredible how something so small can create such widespread beauty. Every single ice particle responds to Daphnis's gentle influence, proving that even the tiniest forces can have far-reaching effects. But Saturn's spinning motion creates an even more fascinating display of physics in action. Saturn spins so fast, it's literally squashing itself flat. Well, not exactly flat, but close enough to make any perfectionist cringe. Picture a pizza dough spinning in the air. That's basically what's happening to Saturn, except instead of making dinner, we're watching a planet reshape itself in real time. The equator bulges outward, while the poles get smooshed inward. Saturn's day lasts just 10 hours and 42 minutes, which means this massive planet completes a full rotation faster than most of us finish a workday. But here's the wild part. Saturn is so squishy that this rapid spinning makes it 10% wider at its equator than from pole to pole. 10%. That's like taking a basketball and stretching it until it looks more like a slightly deflated beach ball. The forces at play here are surprisingly gentle, though. Saturn isn't fighting this transformation. It's just following the natural laws of physics, finding its most comfortable shape given the circumstances. Centrifugal force pushes outward while gravity pulls inward, and somewhere in the middle, they reach this peaceful compromise. This cosmic balancing act creates something beautiful rather than destructive. Saturn wears its bulge like an elegant cosmic corset, maintaining perfect symmetry even while being stretched. Speaking of elegant cosmic features, there's another ring system that puts on quite the ethereal display. Saturn's E-ring is absolutely massive. We're talking about the largest ring in our entire solar system. But here's what makes it fascinating. You could barely see it, even if you were floating right next to it. This ghostly ring stretches from about 3 Saturn radii all the way out to 8 radii from the planet. That's roughly 200,000 miles wide. Yet it's so thin and sparse that it's practically invisible. The particles are spread out like the finest cosmic dust, making it more of a whisper than a shout. What feeds this enormous ring? Our old friend Enceladus. Remember that little ice moon shooting geysers into space? Well, those water particles don't just disappear. They get caught up in Saturn's gravitational field and slowly spread outward, creating this vast, ethereal halo around the planet. The E-ring is thickest, right where Enceladus orbits. No coincidence there. As you move away from that sweet spot, the ring gets progressively thinner. It's like watching ripples spread across a cosmic pond, except these ripples are made of ice crystals floating in the vacuum of space. The particles themselves are tiny, smaller than the period at the end of this sentence. They drift peacefully through space, occasionally bumping into each other in slow-motion cosmic ballet. But there's something even more mysterious about how these particles behave when they encounter magnetic fields. Deep beneath Saturn's swirling clouds, scientists think there might be something incredible hiding. An ocean. Not on the surface like Earth's, but buried way down inside the planet itself. Now, You might be wondering how water could exist inside a gas giant. Well, it gets pretty wild down there. The pressure becomes so intense that it could squeeze hydrogen and oxygen together, creating liquid water in conditions we can barely imagine. The temperature deep in Saturn's core reaches about 25,000 degrees Fahrenheit. That's hotter than the sun's surface. But here's the thing. With enough pressure, water stays liquid, even at these crazy temperatures. It's like nature's own pressure cooker, except the size of a planet. What makes this even more fascinating is that this potential ocean would be nothing like the peaceful lakes on Titan or the geysers of Enceladus. This would be superheated, super pressurized water mixed with dissolved rock and metals. Think of it as the universe's most extreme hot tub. The best part? We're still not completely sure it's there. Saturn keeps its deepest secrets locked away beneath thousands of miles of swirling gas and liquid hydrogen. Some mysteries are worth the wait. But Saturn's family of moons creates an entirely different kind of harmony. Mathematical relationships in space aren't just coincidence. They're like cosmic choreography that's been rehearsed for billions of years. Saturn's moons dance to precise mathematical rhythms called orbital resonances. Take Mimas and Tethys. For every 2 times Mimas circles Saturn, Tethys completes exactly 1 orbit. That's a perfect 2-to-1 ratio, and it's not random luck. These resonances happen because gravity loves patterns. When moons get into these mathematical relationships, they actually help each other stay stable. It's like having a cosmic buddy system, where everyone keeps everyone else in line. Enceladus and Dione have their own partnership, a beautiful 2-to-1 dance that's been going on for millions of years. Every time Enceladus makes 2 trips around Saturn, Dione finishes 1. The timing is so perfect it would make a Swiss watchmaker jealous. But here's what's really wild. These resonances can pump energy into the moons. That gravitational tugging and stretching actually heats up the moon's insides. Remember those ice geysers shooting from Enceladus? That's resonance energy at work, keeping the moon's core warm enough for liquid oceans. The 3-to-2 resonance between Titan and Hyperion creates another layer of cosmic harmony. Nature seems to prefer these simple mathematical relationships over chaos. Speaking of Titan, there's something even more remarkable about Saturn's giant moon that goes beyond simple orbital mechanics. Picture Saturn as the solar system's bouncer, but instead of keeping troublemakers out of nightclubs, it kept massive asteroids from smashing into Earth billions of years ago. During the late heavy bombardment period, roughly 4 billion years ago, our solar system looked like a cosmic demolition derby. Chunks of rock the size of mountains were flying everywhere. Mars got pummeled so hard, it probably still has a headache. The moon? Well, its cratered face tells the whole violent story. But here's where Saturn played the hero. Its massive gravitational field acted like a cosmic vacuum cleaner, sucking up debris that might have otherwise turned Earth into Swiss cheese. Jupiter gets most of the credit for this planetary protection service, but Saturn was the reliable backup singer who made the whole performance work. The timing was perfect. Without Saturn's gentle influence, life on Earth might never have had the peaceful environment it needed to develop. Every breath you take exists, partly because Saturn was in the right place at the right time, doing its gravitational housekeeping. Think about that next time you're having a rough day. Saturn literally helped make your existence possible by playing cosmic defense 4 billion years ago. Makes sense, right? Even today, Saturn continues this protective role. though the bombardment has thankfully calmed down to a gentle cosmic drizzle. From Saturn's incredible distance, Earth becomes something almost impossible to believe. Just a tiny pale blue dot suspended in the cosmic dark. Carl Sagan famously wrote about this perspective, and honestly, it hits different when you're talking about the view from Saturn. We're talking about 900 million miles away. That's so far that our entire planet, with all its oceans, mountains, and 7 billion people, shrinks down to less than a pixel. Makes you feel pretty small, doesn't it? But here's what's beautiful about this cosmic humbling. When the Cassini spacecraft looked back at us from Saturn's neighborhood in 2013, it captured something profound. Earth appeared as this fragile speck caught in a sunbeam between Saturn's rings. Every human who ever lived, every war fought, every love story, every achievement, all contained in that microscopic dot of light. The funny thing is, while we're stressing about our daily problems down here, Saturn just keeps doing its thing. Slowly orbiting the sun with those magnificent rings, completely indifferent to our drama. There's something oddly comforting about that perspective. From Saturn's viewpoint, we're all in this together on our little blue marble. Political borders vanish. Arguments seem silly. We're just fellow passengers on spaceship Earth. Speaking of Saturn's atmospheric layers, the planet itself has its own complex organization happening. Saturn's atmosphere isn't just one big blob of gas swirling around aimlessly. It's actually organized into distinct layers, like a cosmic wedding cake that somehow never collapses. The outermost layer sits about 60 miles above what we call Saturn's surface, though really, there's no solid ground to speak of. This top deck is where ammonia ice crystals hang out, creating those beautiful white wisps we see in telescope images. Think of it as Saturn's version of high-altitude clouds, except they're made of stuff that would probably make your eyes water. Below that, the party gets warmer. Ammonium hydrosulfide clouds form the next layer down, giving Saturn some of its golden brown coloring. These clouds are basically Saturn's middle management, not as flashy as the top layer, but doing important atmospheric work. Then there's the deepest visible layer, where water ice crystals drift lazily through the increasing pressure. By the time you reach this level, the atmospheric pressure would crush you faster than a grape in a hydraulic press. But somehow, it all works together in perfect harmony. Each layer has its own temperature, its own chemistry, its own personality. The temperature differences create gentle boundaries that keep everything neatly separated, like invisible shelves holding Saturn's atmospheric treasures. But Saturn's organizational skills don't stop with just stacking clouds. When astronomers first spotted Saturn's rings back in the 1600s, they had no idea what they were looking at. Galileo thought Saturn had handles. Seriously. The guy who revolutionized astronomy basically saw Saturn and went, well, that's a planet with ears. It wasn't until 50 years later that someone figured out these weren't cosmic coffee cup handles, but actual rings. And then came the fun part, naming them. The first ring discovered got called the A ring. Simple enough, right? Then they found another one closer to Saturn and called it the B ring. Makes perfect sense so far. But then things got wonderfully chaotic. When they discovered a ring even further out, instead of calling it the C ring like any rational person would, they jumped all the way to D. Wait, no, that's wrong too. They called the outer one the A ring, and the new inner one became B. Actually, let me start over. The rings are named alphabetically in order of discovery, not distance from Saturn. So we ended up with this beautiful mess where the rings go D, C, B, A, F, G, E as you move outward. It's like someone started organizing their bookshelf and then just gave up halfway through. There's something oddly comforting about this cosmic filing system gone wrong. Even Saturn's majestic organization has a touch of human chaos. Saturn stands almost perfectly upright in space, like a cosmic soldier at attention, while Earth wobbles dramatically with its 23.5-degree tilt, giving us wild seasonal swings. Saturn keeps it cool with just a modest 26 7/10 degree lean. That's barely more than Earth, but the difference is everything. This gentle tilt means Saturn doesn't throw seasonal tantrums. No extreme summers that could boil away atmospheres, or winters that freeze everything solid. Instead, Saturn experiences the cosmic equivalent of a pleasant spring day that lasts for 7 Earth years at a time. The stability is remarkable when you consider Saturn's size. Something that massive could easily be tumbling through space like a cosmic bowling ball. But Saturn maintains its dignified posture, rotating every 10 hours and 42 minutes with clockwork precision. This upright stance keeps Saturn's incredible ring system perfectly positioned for our viewing pleasure. If Saturn tilted wildly like Uranus, we'd sometimes see the rings edge on for decades, missing their full glory. Instead, Saturn's steady orientation gives us consistent, breathtaking views as it slowly orbits the Sun. The reliable tilt also means Saturn's moons experience predictable seasons. Titan doesn't have to deal with 100-year-long winters or summers that could disrupt its delicate methane weather patterns. But what really makes Saturn's ring system so mesmerizing isn't just its position. Deep within Saturn's ring system, something remarkable happens that would make any architect jealous. The ice particles don't just float around randomly like cosmic dust bunnies. They actually organize themselves into temporary crystal-like structures that appear and vanish like morning frost on a window. These aren't permanent buildings, mind you. We're talking about clumps of ring material that stick together for a few hours or days, creating delicate arrangements that would make snowflakes look chunky by comparison. The particles follow invisible gravitational blueprints, clustering into patterns that emerge from pure physics. What's fascinating is how these structures form without any planning committee or cosmic construction crew. Gravity does all the heavy lifting, literally. When particles drift too close together, they create these ephemeral sculptures that dance around Saturn in perfect formation before slowly dissolving back into individual pieces. Think of it like watching sandcastles build themselves on a beach, except the beach is moving at 17,000 miles per hour, and the sand is made of pure ice floating in the vacuum of space. The whole process repeats endlessly, creating a constantly shifting architectural display that no human has ever witnessed up close. But here's where things get even more mysterious. The age of these magnificent rings themselves remains one of astronomy's most hotly debated puzzles. Here's something that'll keep astronomers debating for decades. Nobody can agree on how old Saturn's rings actually are. Some think they're ancient relics from when the solar system first formed 4.5 billion years ago. Others insist they're cosmic newcomers, maybe just a few 100 million years old. The ancient ring camp points to their sheer size and complexity. How could something so magnificent form quickly? They argue the rings have been there since day one, slowly evolving into the masterpiece we see today. Makes sense, right? But then there's the young ring theory. These researchers look at how quickly ring material gets contaminated by dust and meteoroids. They say the rings are way too clean and bright to be billions of years old. Plus, Saturn's moons are slowly stealing ring material through gravitational interactions. The Cassini mission threw another wrench into the debate. Its data suggested the rings might be surprisingly young in cosmic terms. Well, that really stirred things up. What's beautiful about this disagreement isn't the conflict. It's how passionate people get about Saturn's history. Scientists spend entire careers trying to solve this puzzle. And honestly, the mystery makes the rings even more enchanting. While researchers continue their gentle scientific discussion about ring ages, there's another fascinating process happening right now that's slowly reshaping Saturn's entire moon system. Picture Saturn's moons as cosmic wanderers on an endless journey away from home. They're not just sitting there frozen in space, they're actually moving outward, inch by inch, year after year. It's like the universe's slowest road trip ever. This happens because of something called tidal forces. You know how the moon affects Earth's oceans? Well, Saturn's moons create tiny bulges on Saturn itself. As these moons orbit, they're constantly tugging at Saturn's material, creating friction. That friction steals a bit of energy from Saturn's rotation and gives it to the moons. The result? The moons gradually spiral outward. We're talking incredibly slow here, maybe a few centimeters per year for most moons. Titan, Saturn's largest moon, is creeping away at about 11 centimeters annually. That's roughly the speed your fingernails grow. What's fascinating is that this migration has been happening for billions of years. Some of Saturn's moons might have started much closer to the planet. Over cosmic time, they've been on this gentle exodus, slowly expanding their orbits like ripples spreading across a pond. The whole system is basically rewinding itself in super slow motion. It's migration without the moving trucks. But here's something that might surprise you about how this migration actually shapes the entire ring system. Saturn doesn't just sit there looking pretty with its rings. This gas giant actually plays cosmic traffic cop for comets throughout our solar system. Every time a comet ventures into the outer reaches, Saturn's massive gravitational pull tugs at it like an invisible hand. The planet's influence reaches far beyond what you might expect. Comets that originated in the distant Kuiper Belt often get their orbits completely rearranged after a close encounter with Saturn. Some get flung out of the solar system entirely, while others end up in new elliptical paths that bring them closer to the Sun. But here's what makes this really fascinating. Saturn doesn't just randomly scatter comets around like a cosmic pinball machine. Its gravitational influence actually creates distinct families of comets with similar orbital characteristics. These comet families share the same basic trajectories because they all receive the same type of gravitational nudge from our ringed friend. The Centaur family of comets owes its existence largely to Saturn's influence. These icy wanderers cruise between Jupiter and Neptune, following paths that Saturn helped carve out millions of years ago. Without Saturn's gentle steering, our night sky would look completely different. Even more impressive, Saturn continues shaping comet populations today, constantly fine-tuning the cosmic dance. Speaking of cosmic influence, there's something uniquely beautiful about the spaces between Saturn's rings that reveals deeper truths about existence itself. empty space gets a bad reputation. We think nothing equals boring, but Saturn's ring gaps tell a completely different story. The Cassini division stretches nearly 3,000 miles wide. That's roughly the distance from New York to Denver. Just nothing. No ice particles dancing around. No cosmic debris having a party. Pure, beautiful emptiness. What makes this gap so special? It's not random. Saturn's moon Mimas sits out there, minding its own business. But its gravity creates what astronomers call a 2-to-1 resonance. Every time a ring particle tries to settle in that gap, Mimas gives it a gentle gravitational nudge. Not here, buddy. Keep moving. It's like having an invisible cosmic bouncer. The weird part is how perfectly maintained this emptiness stays. Billions of ice chunks whizzing around at thousands of miles per hour, yet they all respect this invisible boundary. No one crosses the line. Ancient philosophers would have loved this. They spent centuries debating whether true emptiness could exist. Turns out, Saturn figured it out long before humans started arguing about it. These gaps aren't just absent space. They're actively maintained voids, carved by gravitational forces that never sleep. The absence becomes presence through pure mathematical precision. But gaps aren't Saturn's only mystery. The planet itself radiates something fascinating that completely defies what we'd expect from a cold, distant world. Saturn literally glows like a cosmic heater, pumping out 2.5 times more energy than it soaks up from the sun. That's not normal planet behavior, folks. Most worlds just reflect sunlight and call it a day. But Saturn? It's running its own internal furnace 4 billion miles from our star. The planet radiates about 4 trillion watts of excess heat into the frigid darkness of space. That's enough energy to power every city on Earth for centuries. Where does this mysterious warmth come from? Well, Saturn is basically a slow-motion collapse happening over billions of years. Gravity keeps squeezing the planet inward, and all that compression generates serious heat. Think of it like the ultimate stress ball that never stops being squeezed. But here's what makes this really wild. Saturn formed when dinosaurs would have seemed like distant future science fiction, yet it's still cooling down from its birth. The planet started out way hotter than it is today, and we're basically watching a 4.5 billion year old cooling process in action. This gentle warmth even affects Saturn's weather patterns. The internal heat drives those beautiful cloud bands we see swirling around the planet. It's like having central heating on a planetary scale. Speaking of those mesmerizing patterns, Saturn's rings create their own kind of waves. Saturn's rings aren't just sitting there looking pretty. They're actually alive with motion, creating some of the most elegant wave patterns in our solar system. These spiral density waves ripple through the ring material like cosmic surf rolling across an infinite beach. The physics behind this is surprisingly simple. When one of Saturn's moons tugs on ring particles with its gravity, it doesn't just pull them once and walk away. Nope. That gravitational nudge travels outward through the rings, creating waves that spiral around Saturn like a slowly unfurling ribbon. Picture dropping a stone in a perfectly still pond, but instead of circular ripples, you get gorgeous spirals that stretch for thousands of miles. The math here is basically the same as sound waves traveling through air, except these waves are made of billions of ice chunks dancing to gravitational music. What's wild is how organized this chaos becomes. Ring particles that seem randomly scattered actually follow precise mathematical patterns. Each wave crest represents a traffic jam of ice particles bunching up while the valleys are cosmic highways where particles cruise along with more elbow room. These waves can last for years, slowly rotating around Saturn like a massive celestial record player. The whole thing runs on pure physics, no batteries required. But Saturn's magnetic field creates an entirely different kind of protective bubble around this ringed wonderland. Saturn's magnetic field acts like an invisible cosmic bodyguard, creating a protective bubble around the entire moon system. Well, think of it as the universe's most sophisticated security system that never takes a break. This magnetosphere extends millions of miles into space, gently deflecting harmful solar radiation that would otherwise strip away the delicate atmospheres of moons like Titan and Enceladus. Without this shield, those fascinating methane lakes and ice geysers we love so much, they'd be long gone. The funny thing is, Saturn's magnetic field is almost perfectly aligned with its rotation axis. Most planets wobble their magnetic fields around like a drunk person with a flashlight, but not Saturn. It keeps things neat and orderly, just like everything else about this cosmic perfectionist. Here's what makes this protection truly beautiful. The magnetic field creates auroras at Saturn's poles that dance in ultraviolet light. These aren't just pretty light shows, though. They're actually proof that the shield is working, deflecting charged particles and turning them into ethereal displays of cosmic art. The field also helps trap and organize the charged particles around Saturn, creating radiation belts that actually sculpt and maintain the ring system. It's like having a cosmic traffic controller that keeps everything flowing smoothly. But there's something even more remarkable about how this magnetic embrace affects Saturn's strangest moon. Imagine having a cozy blanket wrapped around an entire moon. That's essentially what Titan enjoys every single day. Saturn's largest moon sits snugly beneath an atmosphere so thick and substantial that it makes our own air look practically transparent. The pressure on Titan's surface? About 1.5 times what we experience on Earth. Perfect Goldilocks territory. Not too much, not too little. This gentle atmospheric hug means something magical happens there that's impossible almost anywhere else in the outer solar system. Liquid can actually pool on the surface. Rivers flow. Lakes shimmer under Saturn's distant light. Sure, it's liquid methane instead of water, but the principle remains beautifully familiar. Weather patterns develop with the same lazy rhythm we know from lazy Sunday afternoons. Here's what makes this especially soothing. Titan's thick atmosphere acts like nature's ultimate sound dampener. No harsh solar radiation penetrates that orange, nitrogen-rich blanket. Everything happens in soft, muted tones. Even if you could somehow stand on Titan's surface, the thick air would make every sound gentle and subdued. The atmospheric pressure also means no explosive decompression, no instant freezing, just a steady, reliable embrace that's been wrapping Titan in comfort for billions of years. But Titan's atmospheric story gets even more interesting when you consider how those ring particles we've been exploring actually. Every single ice crystal floating in Saturn's rings has its own cosmic story. These particles aren't permanent residents. They're more like temporary visitors on an eternal carousel ride. Most ring particles survive anywhere from 10 million to 100 million years before meeting their fate. That sounds like forever, but in cosmic terms, it's practically a blink. Saturn itself has been around for 4.5 billion years, meaning the rings we see today might be completely different from the ones that existed when dinosaurs roamed Earth. what happens to these icy wanderers? Well, they don't just vanish into thin air. Some get knocked out of orbit by collisions with their neighbors, cosmic bumper cars, if you will. Others slowly spiral inward towards Saturn, eventually becoming part of the planet's atmosphere. It's like a very, very slow water slide that takes millions of years to complete. But here's the beautiful part. As old particles disappear, new ones constantly take their place. Tiny moonlets within the rings get shattered by impacts, creating fresh material. Enceladus keeps pumping out ice particles from its geysers. The rings are essentially recycling themselves in an endless cycle of renewal. This constant turnover means Saturn's rings are always changing, always refreshing themselves. Speaking of refreshing changes, there's something fascinating about how ancient cosmic violence actually created today's peaceful ring system. Long before Saturn looked like the peaceful giant we know today, it went through some seriously rough times. We're talking about billions of years ago, when the solar system was basically a cosmic shooting gallery. Asteroids and comets were flying around like angry bees, smashing into everything in sight. Saturn's moons took a real beating during this period. Poor little Mimas got whacked so hard that it nearly split apart completely. That giant crater on its surface? That's not just a beauty mark. It's evidence of an impact that almost turned one moon into a bunch of space rocks. But here's what's amazing about all this ancient violence. Time heals everything, even on cosmic scales. Those brutal impacts that scarred Saturn's moons, they're now just peaceful, quiet craters that tell stories of survival. The bombardment eventually calmed down as the solar system found its rhythm. All those wild projectiles either got swept up by planets or flung out into deep space. What remained was the serene family of moons we see today, each one carrying the gentle scars of their turbulent youth. It's oddly comforting to know that even in space, chaos eventually gives way to peace. Those ancient impacts actually helped shape the beautiful system we admire now. Speaking of peaceful aftermath, there's something equally soothing about Saturn's incredibly cold temperatures. Saturn isn't just cold, it's absolutely freezing. We're talking negative 290 degrees Fahrenheit at the cloud tops. That's cold enough to freeze nitrogen solid. But here's what makes this interesting. The extreme cold actually creates one of the most peaceful environments in our solar system. Everything moves in slow motion when it's this frigid. Chemical reactions crawl along at a snail's pace. Atmospheric processes that might rage violently on warmer worlds become gentle, methodical dances. Think about it like this. Ever notice how a really cold winter day feels almost silent? Snow muffles sound, air becomes crisp and still. Saturn's cold works similarly, but on a planetary scale. The freezing temperatures preserve everything in a kind of cosmic slow motion. Well, this isn't just about comfort. It's about preservation. Those beautiful ring particles we've been talking about, they've lasted billions of years, partly because Saturn's neighborhood is so cold. Ice doesn't evaporate quickly when temperatures are this low. It just sits there, spinning peacefully around the planet like frozen clockwork. The cold also explains why Saturn's storms, even the massive ones, eventually calm down. Heat drives chaos. Cold brings order. It's nature's way of hitting the cosmic pause button. And speaking of order, there's something mesmerizing about how light behaves differently through Saturn's rings. When sunlight hits Saturn's rings, something magical happens. Some sections let light pass right through like cosmic windows. others block it completely, creating deep shadows. It's like looking through different curtains in the same house. The A-ring? Pretty dense. You can barely see through it. But then there's the C-ring, also called the crepe ring, which is so transparent it almost disappears. Early astronomers thought it was just empty space between the bright rings. Turns out they were looking at Saturn's version of frosted glass. Here's what makes this fascinating. Ring opacity changes based on particle density. Where ice chunks pack together tightly, you get thick, opaque sections. Where they spread out, crystal clear gaps that reveal the stars behind. The coolest part happens during ring plane crossings. Every 15 years or so, Earth aligns perfectly with Saturn's ring edge. Suddenly, these massive rings nearly vanish from view. They're so thin compared to their width that they become almost invisible. It's like watching a coin disappear when you turn it sideways. This disappearing act fooled astronomers for decades. They'd see magnificent rings, then nothing. Some wondered if Saturn was eating its own jewelry. The transparency variations create this incredible light show that changes as Saturn rotates. But there's something even more mesmerizing about how these ring particles manage their perfectly timed orbital ballet. Picture the most perfect clock you've ever seen. Now multiply that precision by about 1 trillion. That's Saturn's system for you. Every single moon knows exactly where it should be. Mimas completes its orbit in 22 hours and 37 minutes. Not 22 hours and 38 minutes. Not 22 hours and 36 minutes. Exactly 22 hours and 37 minutes, every single time. Enceladus? 1 day, 8 hours, 53 minutes. Like clockwork. Titan takes 15 days, 22 hours, and 41 minutes to circle Saturn. You could literally set your calendar by these moons. But here's what blows my mind. They've been doing this dance for billions of years. Billions! Your alarm clock probably can't keep accurate time for 6 months without drifting. But Saturn's moons have been punctual since before life existed on Earth. The ring particles are even more impressive. Each tiny ice crystal follows the exact same mathematical rules that govern everything from falling apples to orbiting space stations. Newton's laws, written in ice and stone, playing out on a stage 4 billion miles wide. This isn't chaos. This is the universe showing off its organizational skills. Every gravitational tug, every orbital resonance, every shepherding effect, it all works together, like the gears in the most sophisticated watch ever built. Speaking of sophisticated timing, Saturn's internal structure operates on an even more mysterious schedule. Deep inside Saturn, something incredible happened over 4.5 billion years ago. Picture a cosmic sorting machine, quietly organizing materials by weight while the planet was still forming. The heaviest stuff? Iron and rock, slowly sinking toward the center like stones through honey. This process is called differentiation, and Saturn mastered it with the patience of a Zen master. No rushing, no drama. Just gravity doing its gentle work, one particle at a time. The iron didn't fight the journey downward. It simply followed the most natural path possible. What's fascinating is how orderly this cosmic separation became. Lighter materials, like hydrogen and helium, rose to form the atmosphere we see today. Heavier elements settled into what we think is a solid core, possibly 15 to 20 times more massive than Earth. That's like having 15 Earths compressed into a ball, sitting quietly at Saturn's heart. But here's what makes this so peaceful to contemplate. This sorting happened gradually over millions of years. No sudden changes or violent reorganization, just the slow, methodical work of physics, creating order from chaos with infinite patience. Even today, this process might still be happening. Helium droplets occasionally condensing and falling deeper into Saturn's interior, like the gentlest rain you could imagine. The planet continues organizing itself, one tiny adjustment at a time. Speaking of gentle processes, Saturn's atmospheric layers tell their own story of peaceful organization. Watching Saturn through a telescope changes you. I remember the first time I spotted those rings myself. Tiny, golden, perfect. That moment when your eyes adjust, and suddenly there it is, hanging in space like some cosmic jewel. The patience required to find it, focus it, really see it. That's Saturn's first lesson. Ancient astronomers spent decades tracking Saturn's slow journey across the sky. 29 years for one orbit around the Sun. These patient stargazers learned to think in longer rhythms, seasonal cycles that stretched beyond human lifespans. They discovered something profound. The universe operates on its own timeline, completely indifferent to our hurried lives. Modern Saturn watching teaches similar wisdom. You can't rush the moment when atmospheric turbulence settles and the rings snap into crystal clarity. You wait. You breathe. You let your eyes adapt to the darkness. Some nights, Saturn disappoints. Atmospheric seeing is terrible, or clouds roll in. Other nights, it's breathtaking. This waiting game mirrors life itself. Saturn doesn't care about your schedule, your deadlines, your urgent problems. It simply exists, serene and magnificent, following laws written 4.5 billion years ago. There's something deeply calming about connecting with an object that's been peacefully circling the sun since before Earth had continents. But Saturn's most incredible feature, those mesmerizing ring particle velocities, reveals even more surprising secrets about cosmic motion. Ring particles around Saturn move at absolutely mind-boggling speeds. We're talking about chunks of ice racing around the planet at velocities that would make a Formula One driver weep with envy. The inner ring particles zip along at roughly 17,000 miles per hour. That's fast enough to circle Earth in about an hour and a half. Meanwhile, particles in the outer rings take a more leisurely approach, cruising at around 10,000 miles per hour. Still fast enough to make your morning commute look like a turtle race. But here's what makes this cosmic speed limit so beautifully peaceful. It's all about distance and gravity working in perfect harmony. The closer you are to Saturn, the faster you need to move to avoid getting sucked into that massive gravitational embrace. It's like a cosmic speed dating event where everyone knows exactly how fast to dance. The really mesmerizing part? These billions of ice particles maintain their perfect velocities without any traffic cops or speed limit signs. Each tiny fragment instinctively knows its proper speed based on its distance from Saturn. Too slow, and down you go. Too fast, and you drift away into the lonely void. This creates the most elegant traffic system in the solar system. No accidents, no road rage, just pure mathematical beauty in motion. Speaking of mathematical beauty, Saturn's entire system operates on principles that seem almost too perfect to be real. Saturn doesn't just keep its celestial family organized, it's actually sharing its wealth with the entire solar system. Every time you look up and notice that faint, mysterious glow stretching across the dawn or dusk sky, Saturn might be partly responsible for that ethereal light show. That ghostly pyramid of light is called zodiacal light. Most people never even notice it because it's so subtle. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. Well, here's something that'll blow your mind. Saturn's ring system is one of the contributors to this cosmic phenomenon. Ring particles don't stay put forever. They bump into each other, get nudged by moonlets, and sometimes just wander off. When they do escape Saturn's gravitational embrace, they don't disappear into nothingness. Instead, they join an invisible cloud of dust that fills the space between planets throughout our solar system. This interplanetary dust creates zodiacal light when sunlight hits it at just the right angle. It's like Saturn is leaving breadcrumbs of ice and rock throughout the solar system, creating beauty far beyond its own neighborhood. Pretty generous for a gas giant, right? The really wild part is that this process has been happening for millions of years. Saturn has been quietly decorating our entire solar system with microscopic pieces of its rings, creating phenomena we can see from Earth without even realizing the connection. But Saturn's influence doesn't stop there. Saturn's ring system looks like complete chaos when you zoom in close enough. Billions of ice particles smashing around, shepherd moons yanking material this way and that, gravitational forces pulling from every direction. You'd think it would be a cosmic demolition derby up there. But here's what blew my mind when I first learned about this. All that apparent madness follows incredibly precise natural laws. Every collision, every orbital shift, every tiny ice crystal's path can be predicted with mathematical equations. It's like watching a hurricane and realizing every water droplet knows exactly where it's supposed to go. The ring particles crash into each other constantly, yet somehow they maintain these perfectly organized bands. Some chunks get ejected completely, others merge together, but the overall structure stays remarkably stable. It's controlled chaos, like a jazz improvisation, where every musician seems to play whatever they want, but together they create something beautiful. Saturn's gravity provides the baseline rhythm, while the moons add their own gravitational riffs. The whole system finds this incredible balance between complete disorder and rigid structure. Neither wins completely. The result? Those gorgeous flowing rings that have mesmerized humans for centuries. Even the most chaotic-looking features, like the F-ring's braided sections, follow predictable patterns when you understand the physics involved. But Saturn's individual ring particles aren't the only things following hidden rules. Saturn isn't just another pretty face in our solar system. It's actually teaching us how planets are born. When researchers study Saturn's rings and moons, they're looking at a miniature version of what happened 4.5 billion years ago. Back then, our entire solar system was just a swirling disk of gas and dust. Sound familiar? That's exactly what Saturn's rings look like today, minus the epic timescale. The way ice particles clump together in Saturn's rings. That's the same process that built planets. Small chunks attract other small chunks, which eventually become bigger chunks, and so on. It's like watching cosmic Legos assembling themselves in slow motion. But here's where Saturn gets really clever. Unlike other planets that finished forming eons ago, Saturn kept its ring laboratory running. Scientists can watch accretion happen in real time, which is absolutely wild when you think about it. We're literally seeing planetary formation principles play out right now, 21st century style. The gravitational dance between Saturn's moons also shows us how planets migrate during formation. Jupiter probably bullied its way closer to the Sun before backing off. Saturn's moons do similar choreography on a smaller scale. Every new discovery about Saturn adds another piece to the puzzle of how we all got here. And there's something deeply satisfying about that cosmic detective work. Picture Saturn as the ultimate cosmic artist, spending billions of years carefully sculpting its moons with nothing but gravity. The eternal dance of tidal forces happens so slowly you'd never notice it, but it's constantly reshaping everything in Saturn's neighborhood. Tidal heating works like cosmic kneading. Saturn's massive gravitational pull stretches and squeezes its moons as they orbit, creating friction deep inside them. It's the same force that gives us ocean tides on Earth, except Saturn takes it to a whole other level. Enceladus gets the full spa treatment from this process. The constant stretching keeps its interior warm enough to maintain a liquid ocean beneath miles of ice. Without Saturn's gentle gravitational massage, Enceladus would be a frozen rock. Instead, it shoots magnificent geysers of water into space, like the solar system's most elegant fountain show. Then there's the slow-motion makeover happening everywhere else. Mimas gets pulled into a slightly oval shape. Titan's thick atmosphere gets stirred by tidal forces. Even the ring particles experience tiny tugs that keep them dancing in their cosmic ballet. What makes this whole process beautiful is the patience involved. We're talking about changes that unfold over millions of years. Saturn never rushes its artwork. But the most fascinating part might be how these same forces could eventually tear apart some moons entirely. Saturn's atmosphere wasn't always the peaceful, golden-hued blanket we see today. Well, actually, it's been transforming for over 4.5 billion years. When Saturn first formed, its atmosphere was probably a chaotic mess of hydrogen, helium, and whatever cosmic debris happened to be floating around. Back then, our ringed giant was like a planetary teenager going through some serious mood swings. The early atmosphere was much thicker and probably contained way more heavy elements than it does now. But here's where things get fascinating. Gravity became Saturn's personal life coach. Over billions of years, heavier elements slowly sank toward the core, while lighter gases rose to the top. Think of it like cosmic soup that's been simmering on the universe's slowest burner setting. The helium gradually separated from hydrogen, creating those beautiful layered cloud decks we admire today. The really mind-blowing part? Saturn's atmosphere is still evolving right now, just incredibly slowly. Every second, tiny changes happen that we'll never notice in our lifetimes. The planet's internal heat engine continues driving atmospheric circulation patterns that have been running longer than life has existed on Earth. This gradual transformation teaches us something profound about patience and cosmic timescales. But Saturn's atmospheric evolution isn't the only process happening in slow motion. The way ring material slowly fades away tells an even more poetic story. Something beautiful is happening to Saturn's rings right now, and it's not what you'd expect. While we marvel at their eternal dance, these magnificent ice particles are actually on a one-way journey inward. Every single piece of ice in those famous rings is slowly losing energy and spiraling toward Saturn. How slowly? Well, we're talking cosmic timescales here. The rings won't disappear tomorrow or even in 1,000,000 years. But over hundreds of millions of years, this gentle decay creates something surprisingly poetic. Each collision between ice particles steals a tiny bit of momentum. Each gravitational tug pulls them slightly closer to the planet. The inner rings are already showing signs of this cosmic fade. They're gradually becoming less dense, like a crowd slowly dispersing after a concert. But here's what makes it beautiful rather than sad. This process is incredibly gentle. No dramatic crashes or violent endings, just a peaceful return home. Think about it. These ring particles have been dancing around Saturn for potentially hundreds of millions of years. They've witnessed the rise and fall of dinosaurs, the formation of mountains, and countless human generations. Now they're simply ready for their final act. The really fascinating part? As they spiral inward, some of these particles might actually rain down onto Saturn's atmosphere, creating brief, brilliant streaks of light. But Saturn's magnetic field tells an even more intriguing story about how this cosmic theater operates. You know what's wild about Saturn? This massive gas giant didn't just quietly form in its corner of space and mind its own business. Nope. Saturn basically became the solar system's ultimate cosmic architect, reshaping everything around it, like some kind of gravitational interior designer with serious commitment issues. When Saturn was still growing up, and by growing up, I mean gobbling down gas and dust, like a cosmic teenager raiding the fridge, it was throwing its weight around in ways that would make a bulldozer jealous. The thing is, giant planets don't just sit there looking pretty. They migrate. They wander around like they're searching for the perfect parking spot. Except their parking process can completely mess with everyone else's orbits. Saturn's early wandering probably pushed smaller planets around, cleared out asteroid belts, and maybe even sent some unfortunate rocky worlds spinning off into the cosmic void. Talk about being a problematic neighbor. But here's where Saturn gets interesting as a roommate. Once it settled down, it became surprisingly protective. Its massive gravitational field acts like a cosmic bouncer, deflecting dangerous asteroids and comets away from the inner solar system. Without Saturn's influence, Earth might be getting pelted with space rocks way more often. The gas giant even helps maintain the asteroid belt structure, keeping things organized through something called gravitational resonance. There's something almost hypnotic about watching Saturn's rings through a telescope. The gentle, steady rotation creates this mesmerizing effect that pulls you into a peaceful trance. Amateur astronomers often report losing track of time while observing Saturn, and there's actual science behind why this happens. The human brain responds to symmetrical, rotating patterns by entering what psychologists call a meditative state. Saturn's rings provide the perfect visual rhythm. Not too fast, not too slow. Just right for triggering our natural relaxation response. But here's what makes Saturn observation truly special. You're watching something that's been spinning for billions of years. That ring system has been performing this exact same dance since before Earth had complex life. Talk about reliability. Professional astronomers joke that Saturn is like cosmic Valium. After staring at chaotic galaxy formations or violent stellar explosions all night, pointing the telescope at Saturn feels like taking a deep breath. The rings just sit there, doing their thing with zero drama. Even Galileo, despite his confusion about what he was seeing, described feeling peaceful wonder when observing Saturn. 400 years later, that same sense of calm washes over anyone who takes the time to really look. The gentle gravitational forces that hold everything together create something even more soothing than Saturn's visual beauty. Picture Saturn as the ultimate cosmic parent, gently cradling its incredible family of 146 moons and countless ring particles in its gravitational arms. This isn't some harsh, controlling grip. that crushes everything in sight. Nope. Saturn's gravity works more like a warm, protective hug that's been going on for billions of years. The beautiful thing about Saturn's gravitational embrace? It's perfectly calibrated. Too weak, and everything would drift away into the cold emptiness of space. Too strong, and those delicate ice crystals in the rings would get yanked down to the planet's surface faster than you can say goodbye, pretty rings. But Saturn has found that sweet spot. Each moon, from tiny Aegeon to massive Titan, sits exactly where it needs to be. The ring particles dance in their designated lanes like the universe's most organized traffic system. Well, mostly organized anyway. Saturn's gravity even knows when to let go. Some of its moons are slowly spiraling outward, like cosmic kids growing up and moving away from home. The planet doesn't fight this natural process. It just keeps providing that steady, reliable presence while allowing its family members to follow their own paths. Here's what makes this gravitational dance even more remarkable, though. Saturn's rings themselves reveal something fascinating about cosmic proportions. When you look at Saturn, you're witnessing nature's masterclass in perfect design. The proportions are absolutely stunning. Saturn's rings span roughly 280,000 kilometers across, but they're only about 10 meters thick in most places. That's like a dinner plate the size of a football field, but thinner than a sheet of paper. Mind-blowing, right? But here's what makes it even more beautiful: the mathematical harmony hidden in those proportions. The main ring system follows patterns that architects have used for centuries. The spacing between ring divisions, the width ratios, even the way light plays across the surface. It all follows the golden ratio that shows up everywhere in nature. Ancient Greek mathematicians would have lost their minds over Saturn's geometry. The planet itself is almost 10 times wider than Earth, creating this perfect balance with its ring system. Not too big that the rings look tiny, not so small that they overwhelm the planet. It's like the universe hired the best interior designer. Even the way Saturn's moons are distributed follows these pleasing proportions. Each major moon sits at distances that create visual harmony when you see the whole system together. Nature apparently has excellent taste in cosmic architecture. This mathematical perfection isn't just coincidence. It reveals something deeper about how gravity sculpts beauty across vast distances. And speaking of beauty, Saturn's influence on human creativity runs surprisingly deep. Saturn has been quietly shaping human imagination for thousands of years. Ancient Babylonians called it Ninurta, their god of agriculture and war. Kind of ironic when you think about it. This peaceful giant representing conflict. The Romans named it after Saturn, the god of time and harvest. They got that one right. Nothing teaches patience quite like watching something take 29 years to complete one orbit. But here's what's fascinating. Saturn shows up everywhere in human culture. Medieval alchemists believed it represented lead and melancholy. Renaissance artists painted it as a symbol of wisdom and age. Even today, we use Saturnine to describe someone thoughtful and serious. Saturn's rings have inspired countless science fiction stories. Writers imagine civilizations living on ring worlds, whole planets encircled by artificial habitats. The reality is even more beautiful than fiction, though. Musicians have composed symphonies inspired by Saturn's orbital rhythms. Gustav Holst's Saturn, the Bringer of Old Age, captures that slow, majestic quality perfectly. The piece moves like the planet itself, deliberate and profound. Then there's the psychology angle. Carl Jung wrote about Saturn representing life's limitations and lessons, the planet that teaches us about boundaries and time. What's remarkable is how this distant world keeps sparking creativity across every human endeavor. But Saturn's influence on our minds goes even deeper than art and philosophy. You know what's absolutely mind-blowing about Saturn's neighborhood? It's like the universe's most successful apartment complex. We're talking about 146 moons, countless ring particles, and not a single cosmic fender bender in sight. Think about it. Your local parking lot probably has more chaos than Saturn's entire gravitational empire. These moons range from tiny space rocks, barely bigger than city blocks, to massive Titan, which could swallow Mercury whole. Yet somehow, they all get along perfectly. The secret lies in what astronomers call orbital resonance. But here's the thing. It's not really a secret at all. It's just physics being ridiculously elegant. When two moons orbit at precise mathematical ratios, like 2 to 1 or 3 to 2, they actually help each other stay stable. It's cosmic teamwork at its finest. Even more fascinating, the ring particles themselves follow the same peaceful pattern. Billions upon billions of ice chunks, each following its own perfect orbit, never bumping into neighbors. Well, okay, they do bump occasionally, but it's more like a gentle cosmic massage than demolition derby. This harmony didn't happen overnight either. We're looking at 4.5 billion years of gradual adjustment and fine-tuning. But even with all this stability, Saturn still holds mysteries that whisper of ancient cosmic events. Even after decades of studying Saturn, we're still scratching our heads about this magnificent world. The Cassini mission revolutionized our understanding, yet it also revealed just how much we don't know. It's like opening a treasure chest, only to find a map to an even bigger treasure. Take Saturn's hexagonal storm, for instance. We know it exists. We've photographed it countless times. But we still can't fully explain why it maintains that perfect, six-sided shape. Earth's storms are chaotic swirls. Saturn decided to be a cosmic geometry teacher instead. Then there's the question of ring age. Are they ancient relics from Saturn's formation 4.5 billion years ago? Or are they relatively young, maybe only 100 million years old? It's like trying to guess someone's age when they've had really good skincare for eons. The spokes in Saturn's rings continue to baffle scientists too. These ghostly features appear and disappear according to Saturn's seasons, but the exact mechanism remains mysterious. It's as if Saturn is playing cosmic peekaboo with us. And here's something that'll keep you wondering as you drift off tonight. Deep beneath Saturn's swirling clouds, there might be conditions we haven't even dreamed of yet. The gentle mysteries waiting to be discovered remind us that wonder never truly ends. Saturn might just be the universe's most patient teacher. This giant planet has been quietly demonstrating profound lessons about existence for billions of years, and we're only now starting to pay attention. First lesson: time moves differently when you're thinking big. Saturn takes 29 Earth years to complete one orbit around the Sun. That's longer than most people's entire careers. While we're rushing around, worrying about deadlines and daily drama, Saturn reminds us that some things are worth taking slowly. The most beautiful processes, like the gentle dance of its rings, happen on timescales that dwarf human urgency. Then there's the lesson of balance. Saturn maintains an incredibly complex system, of 83 moons and countless ring particles, all held in perfect gravitational harmony. No chaos, no collisions, just elegant cooperation. It's like watching the universe's most successful family reunion that's been going on for eons. The planet also teaches us about finding beauty in simplicity. Saturn is mostly hydrogen and helium, the two most basic elements in the universe. Yet from this simple recipe comes one of the most gorgeous sights in our solar system. Sometimes the most profound beauty emerges from the simplest ingredients. But perhaps Saturn's greatest lesson involves perspective. When we contemplate this distant world, our earthly problems suddenly seem wonderfully manageable. There's something deeply therapeutic about remembering we're part of something so vast and ordered. Saturn represents something remarkable in our chaotic universe. Order. Pure mathematical order that somehow emerged from cosmic mayhem. Think about it. Our solar system started as a swirling mess of gas and dust billions of years ago. No structure, no predictability, just random particles bumping into each other like cosmic bumper cars. Yet somehow, Saturn formed with perfect symmetry, precise orbital mechanics, and rings that follow exact mathematical principles. The math behind Saturn is honestly beautiful. Its moons orbit in perfect resonances, 2 to 1, 3 to 2, 4 to 3. These aren't coincidences. They're natural harmonies that developed over millions of years, like a cosmic orchestra tuning itself without a conductor. Even Saturn's rotation follows reliable patterns. 10 hours and 42 minutes for one day, every single time. The rings maintain their structure through gravitational forces that balance perfectly. No chaos here, just elegant physics doing its thing. When ancient astronomers first spotted Saturn crawling across the sky, they called it a wandering star. But really, it was the opposite of wandering. Saturn was following the most precise path imaginable, obeying laws that wouldn't be discovered for thousands of years. This kind of cosmic reliability feels almost impossible when you consider how messy everything else seems. But there's something even more eternal about Saturn's presence in our night sky. The rings of Saturn will outlast everything you know. Your favorite song, your childhood home, even the pyramids, they'll all be dust, while Saturn's rings continue their graceful waltz through space. Kind of puts Monday morning meetings in perspective, doesn't it? Each ice crystal in those rings follows the same orbital dance it's performed for millions of years. No rush, no deadlines, no stress. Just pure mathematical perfection spinning around a golden giant at thousands of miles per hour. Yet somehow, it feels completely still, like watching snow fall in slow motion. What's remarkable is how this cosmic ballet operates without any conductor. No central command telling each particle where to go. The universe figured out this choreography through nothing but gravity and time. Simple rules creating infinite beauty. The shepherd moons keep gentle watch, nudging wayward particles back into formation. Not with force or violence, but with the subtle pull of gravitational guidance. It's like having cosmic crossing guards who've been on duty for eons without taking a single coffee break. Even when we're long gone, even when Earth itself is just a memory, Saturn's rings will still be there, spinning, shining, creating shadows that dance across the planet's amber clouds. But Saturn holds more than just eternal beauty in its gravitational embrace. As we reach the end of our peaceful journey through Saturn's realm, let's take one final moment. to appreciate what we've discovered together. This magnificent planet, floating 600 million miles away, continues its eternal dance, whether we're watching or not. Right now, while you're settling into bed, Saturn's rings are catching sunlight and casting shadows across billions of ice crystals. Titan's methane lakes are lapping against alien shores under an orange sky. Enceladus is quietly shooting its gentle geysers into the cosmic dark. The shepherd moons are doing their patient work, keeping everything in perfect order. Pretty amazing, right? What strikes me most about Saturn is how it teaches us about time. While we rush through our daily lives, Saturn takes 29 years just to complete one lazy orbit around the Sun. There's something deeply comforting about that unhurried pace. When ancient astronomers first spotted Saturn creeping across the sky, they called it the slowest wanderer. They found peace in its predictable journey, just like we can tonight. Saturn reminds us that some of the universe's most beautiful phenomena happen slowly, quietly, without fanfare. The rings will keep spinning long after we're gone, a testament to the gentle persistence of cosmic beauty. Sweet dreams under Saturn's watchful gaze.